1 minute to the live stream. One minute to air. The live stream has started.
Call the meeting to order and recess until we are able to get a quorum. Everybody's like, what just happened? Good evening and welcome to the Durham Planning Commission. The members of the Durham Planning Commission are appointed by the City Council and the County Board of Commissioners to make recommendations to the elected officials. We emphasize that the elected officials have the final say on any issue before us tonight. While this meeting is being conducted in person, it is also accessible using the Zoom virtual meeting platform. In the virtual meeting platform, public participants do not have the ability to talk or be seen on video by default. In order to maintain meeting decorum and a discernible record of the meeting, the chat function has been disabled. For those attending in person, if you plan on speaking on an agenda item tonight, please go to the table to my left and sign up to speak. When speaking, please state your name and your address clearly when you come to the podium. Please speak directly into the microphone. If you are attending the meeting virtually, you will be given the ability to speak at the appropriate time. If you have pre-registered, your name will be called so you can make your comments just like an in-person meeting hearing. You may also call in during the meeting tonight by dialing 1-301-715-8592. If you call in during the meeting, you will need to wait until the particular public hearing you are interested in starts. After all of the pre-registered speakers have shared their comments, I will ask if there is anyone else wishing to speak. At that point, you will need to digitally raise your hand by pressing *9 on your phone, and when recognized, state your name and address before making your comments. Tonight, the applicant has a total of 10 minutes for a presentation. Each speaker after the applicant, speaking from the community, the public, has 2 minutes to speak. Commissioners, we have 5 cases and are time limited this evening. Therefore, a commissioner has 5 minutes for Q&A and will be only called upon to speak for a second time after all other commissioners have chosen to speak for a first time. Please have your thoughts and questions organized. Commissioners, as a reminder, after the public hearing is closed, you obtain the floor by being recognized by the chair. Commission members, please remember you share this time with your fellow commissioners. Please don't repeat topics that have already been discussed or questioned. The time to make all public statements is before motions are made. Once a motion is on the floor and further discussion regarding that motion must come after a second. All motions are stated in the affirmative, so if a motion fails or ties, the recommendation is for denial. Commissioners, if you are not ready to move a case forward, please indicate as such when questioned. Finally, I ask that everyone here and on the Zoom, the commission members, the staff, the public, to conduct themselves in a courteous and respectful manner. If someone fails to act in that manner, the chair will ask the offending person or persons to leave the room or to be muted on Zoom until such time they can regain personal control. If decorum fails to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until a genuine commitment to act respectful and courteous is observed. And for everyone here tonight in the room, after your case ends, please be courteous and leave this room quietly, waiting until you have exited those doors behind you to have your post-case discussions as the commission continues its remaining business on the agenda. Thank you. May we have the roll call, please?
Chair Cameron.
Here.
Vice Chair Shigaris.
Here.
Commissioner Cutright.
Here.
Commissioner Chakowski.
Here.
Commissioner Gregory.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Kopak.
Here.
Commissioner McIver.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Commissioner Woke.
Here.
And Commissioner Juan has been has requested and received an excused absence for tonight.
We have established a quorum.
Yes, we have established a quorum.
There are no adjustments to the agenda. We're moving on to item number 4 on the agenda to approve the minutes and the consistency statements from the last meeting on October 8th. Do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Chair, could I make an amendment to the meeting notes, or do I wait?
Joanne said she changed them, right, in the email, or you had more?
Yeah,
You had more?
We're aware of the one request
okay.
for the adjustment to the minute.
Do I have to bring it up here or not?
Please do, just for the
Yes.
public record.
Okay. One of the votes, I believe it was for Miami. I don't have the number in front of me. My apologies. I was listed as voting no. I actually voted in the affirmative. It's listed as motion carried 10-0, Johnson voting no.
That was the one you emailed about, and she said she had changed the minutes
Yeah.
already.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so we already got that.
Yeah, but we still need to.
The new vote, okay, got
Yeah,
it.
that's what I was
Okay, got it.
clarifying.
Yes.
All right, I thought it was another one, it was just that one?
No, it was
Okay,
that.
thought it was a 9-0 something.
Yeah, it was the first one, I believe.
Okay. All right, there is do we have an approval to approve the minutes with the adjustment on the vote?
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Kopak and seconded by Commissioner Cutright to approve the minutes and the consistency statements with the adjusted vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Yes.
Oh, okay. Before we begin the cases for tonight, I just want to, members of the Planning Commission, just want to introduce you to our newest planner in the growth management team with the Durham City County Planning Department. This is Peyton Burgess. Peyton began her planning career with the city of Greenville, South Carolina while in school. After graduating from a not-to-be-mentioned orange school in South Carolina, to protect the innocent. With her Master of City and Regional Planning, she moved to Johnson City, Tennessee, where she has served as a planner for a little over 3 years. She has worked with multiple boards and processes, including rezonings, annexations, and text amendments, organized and executed community engagement events, earned her AICP credentials, and even created an interactive box city as a tool to teach kids about urban planning. She is most passionate about prioritizing people and community through the intentional design of the built environment. In addition, Peyton recently got married a couple of months ago, has just moved to Durham within the last few weeks, and loves to travel, with the Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania being her favorite place that she's visited so far. So I just wanted to introduce Peyton to you and welcome her to the department. You'll be seeing her on a monthly basis going forward.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you guys so much for the opportunity to serve the city. I'm really excited to be here. I did ask Aaron to say "Go Tigers" when he introduced me, but he said that as my boss, he would not do that. But that's okay, maybe one day. But again, thank you guys. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you, and welcome.
I need to make a correction. I said as a proud Tar Heel graduate, I could not say go Tigers. Want to make that clear.
All righty. We'll move into the first public hearing, initial zoning maps changes for case Z2400011 to 2613 Carpenter Road. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Cameron. Before I begin, I would like to formally announce that all cases before you tonight have been advertised and posted in accordance with local and state laws, and affidavits to those are available in the Planning Department. The first case before you is Z2400011, 2613 Carpenter Road. There we go. Okay. This site is located, as it says, 2613 Carpenter Road in the suburban tier. The site is 18.29 acres. The current zoning is residential rural, and the request is to rezone to planned development residential 5.587 to allow up to 98 townhouses to be built. The current place types are mixed residential neighborhood and recreation and open space. The request is consistent with these place types. As seen on the zoning context map, immediately to the east across the railroad tracks are other PDR or planned development residential neighborhoods. To the north and west are land zone residential rural and residential suburban 20. And to the south is mostly land zoned light industrial. The aerial map shows the existing street network as well as I-85 to the northwest of the site. The area is predominantly single-family and large lot development. The eastern portion of the site is recreation and open space place type, reflecting the existing floodplain. The rest of the site, as well as areas to the north, west, and south, are designated mixed residential neighborhood. The applicant has proffered several commitments as shown here, including a maximum impervious surface of 60%, 5 townhouse units to be available at 80% AMI for a period of 30 years, as well as native tree plantings and transportation improvements. 2 neighborhood meetings have been held, the first on September 14th, 2023, where 8 community members attended, and a second meeting held on October 28th, 2024, where also 8 community members attended. The proposal is generally consistent with the place type designation of mixed residential neighborhood, and the proposal is consistent with 22 of 36 policies of the Durham Comprehensive Plan. Staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this time, the chair is opening the public hearing. May the applicant please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Tom Johnson with the law firm of Williams Mullen at 301 Fayetteville Street, Suite 1700 in Raleigh, here on behalf of the applicant. Aaron did a great job presenting everything, but I did want to clarify there's no railroad in that area joining the single family. That was long abandoned, so that's just an old railroad right-of-way that's been long abandoned, so there's, it's not there. Aaron did a good job going through this. Up to 98 townhome units. We're providing for some more variety and density to address local housing needs, because in the area is, again, large lot, single family, and so this will add a little more density. There's very low impact on traffic. No TIA was required because the traffic impact was so low. As he mentioned, we're offering 5 affordable units. Open space and tree coverage are above minimum requirements. There is additional buffer along Carpenter Road, simply because in that area there's some wetlands along Carpenter Road and some low areas, and so we're going to leave those but for the one crossing we need to make to get to Carpenter Road. So there'll be additional buffering there, plus the multi-use path. There's no increase in impact on local schools, because the same amount of students would attend the schools under existing zoning and under the rezoning we're proposing. It doesn't change. And again, as Aaron said, the request has been reviewed by staff and determined to be compliant. We did realize we did a textual development plan for this, so it became evident at the staff report that we needed to clarify some of the conditions, plus discussions at the neighborhood meeting. So I want to go over those changes in the policies that we did not meet. Some of them we didn't meet simply because we needed to have some clarifying conditions. As Aaron said, on the eastern property line, there's streams and floodplain and riparian buffers, and this map shows that on that eastern portion. And as a result, it results in gathering together all of the open space as well as the preservation of trees. I'll go through the policies where we're making changes to make sure we meet those. The ones we didn't meet, the ones we met, obviously are obvious in that regard. Policy 48, just in terms of variety of housing, we're adding the townhome type next to existing single family, and there are no age restrictions for this housing proposed on this site. We are going to add a condition that no structures will be constructed in the floodplain except for the sanitary sewer, greenway, or potential trailhead for the greenway. And as I'll indicate later, we had intended to dedicate a greenway easement in that area, and that just got left off. So we're going to end up doing that, and the likely location will be along that abandoned railroad right-of-way in all likelihood. We're also going to add a condition that the open space will be clustered within the floodplain, riparian buffers, and wetlands along the eastern and southern property lines of the site, which would make it consistent with Policy 81. We're going to revise condition number 8 so that the 25% tree coverage will be through preservation, not replacement. So it'll be tree preservation, which in that instance we will meet Policy 85. In Policy 95, we're going to add a condition, again, that there will be no development in the floodplain except for those necessary utilities in the greenway. As to policy 104, we're going to add a condition to grant the right-of-way for Greenway, as I mentioned, along the stream and abandoned railroad right-of-way easement on the eastern property line. And we've already committed to a multi-use path along Carpenter Road, which would be the public accessible improvements on site. As I mentioned earlier, there's no change in the impact on schools. If it were left in the existing zoning or with the zoning change, it stays the same. And it's very minimal, very small impact. And on the place type characteristics, per the staff report and with the addition of the tree preservation condition, this rezoning would be consistent with the green space characteristic as well. I'm available to answer any questions you may have. We will work between now and council meeting to get those conditions crafted how staff is comfortable with. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and we have the engineer on the project, Dan Papps with Papps Design Group, if there are any engineering questions that you may have.
Thank you. So don't see anyone in the audience like to speak on this besides the applicant. We have Donna Standback on the Zoom. Please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Good afternoon. This is Donna Stainback. I live at 4825 Jimmy Rogers Road in Durham, North Carolina. Thank you, Durham Planning Commission, for hearing my input. The first item that I did a review of the zoning map change report, and I saw two different values for impervious soil. One says 60% and one says 70%. I'm hoping that 60% for maximum is correct. And then on page 3, I saw that the project boundary buffers are not required, but we've had some very serious problems without project boundary buffers dealing with the elevation of one land versus another. And so I just like to make sure that that is going to be taken care of by the developer. That some of them have gotten, I guess, statewide notice as far as how the lands meet each other. So that's very important to us. I looked at the transportation impact. I travel this road at least 4 out of the 7 days of the week, and here we have another country road with minimum support and more traffic. The other thing I was looking at is I tried to keep track as he was reading. I believe that 26 of the 36 comprehensive plan policies were met, and that would be like at the 72 percentile. I mean, percent, not percentile.
Ms.
Also,
Standback, I'm sorry, your time
yes.
is up. Thank you. Next, we have Pam Williams.
Good
Go ahead.
afternoon. My name's, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Pam Williams. My address is on file. I would just like to ask a couple of questions. Will the preservation of the trees and the open space be within the same area along the floodplain and the buffers? And does the proposed greenway, which is in the floodplain along the old railroad track, does that count as recreation? And thus, what is proposed as additional tree preservation and open space is all counted in the same area which is the floodplain. The other question is that at one time when I was hearing the presentation, it sounded like he was going to construct the greenway. I'd like to know if he is going, the site is going to construct the greenway, and if not, why not? I think that would add to the proffers on this project. And also, although a TIA was not required, I believe that over 600 vehicles per day addition will be added to this roadway because of this project. And as Donna Stamack stated, that there is a lot of congestion in this area already. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else on the Zoom wishing to speak? All right, would the applicant like to address those questions, provide some answers from the community?
I can clarify real quickly. Traffic, we had Durham Transportation looked at it and obviously made the determination no TIA was required, but with the traffic volumes on that road, it's so low. I mean, the capacity is 14,200 and we're at 3,100. It's very low. The greenway, our condition will be to donate the greenway easement because I'm not sure that things have finally been decided about where Durham would like to locate that. So we don't want to go in there and construct if we don't know where that will be. As I mentioned earlier, there's additional buffer along Carpenter Road. Part of our commitment will be to make that a 50-foot buffer along Carpenter Road, which is more than the required 30. And the grouping of the open space and the trees, I mean, that's in the policies. The desire is that be grouped anyway. So that's consistent with the policies. I know that was raised, but what we're doing is consistent to try to preserve those areas that are indeed in the floodplain and riparian buffers. And that's all that I have unless any of the commissioners have any questions.
Not yet.
Okay.
Thank you. Aaron, you had something?
Sure, I think I can just answer one of the questions that was raised during the public hearing about the 60% versus 70% impervious surface. Because this site is in the Falls Jordan protected watershed protection overlay, the 70% is the maximum allowed by ordinance. The applicant has committed to no more than 60%. So I just want to make that clarification.
Thank you. The maximum is 70%, and the applicant has committed to no more than 60%.
60.
Yes. All right, at this time, the chair is now closing the public hearing, and we are now open for commissioner discussions and questions. Commissioner Johnson? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back to the applicant, for my clarification, the greenway is going to happen, but it's a matter of where it's going to happen? Is that how I took it?
It's a matter of where it's going to happen and when. I mean, this is an area that is far out from the city center, and it's just being the greenway's just at the point of being put in place. So we're going to donate the easement, and if needed, some additional area for a trailhead if the city decides that's what they would like to do.
Okay. Thanks for that. The other couple questions I have is on the floodplain, not meeting UDO 95 and 79 standards as I read them. I heard you talk about the floodplain. Can you just readdress that for me, how that's going to be addressed in terms of protecting the floodplain? Or
we're not going to construct in the floodplain except for any of the greenway improvements, which do end up being in the floodplain often, and the sewer line. Okay. But our other improvements will be outside of the floodplain.
Okay, good. And the last couple of questions I heard, blasting, I read in the notes from the meeting, there was no sort of understanding of what would or would not. Has that been clarified at all?
It has not. I mean, that won't happen until we do some soil testing as the project were to develop further. We don't know the existing conditions to be able to tell that.
Okay.
So there's no way for us to know that.
You'll be sensitive to it, obviously, blasting as a I can't commit to that, but I understand where you're coming from.
I mean, we will if indeed the blasting is required, and I know there are requirements. I live adjoining a lot of the development along Leesville Road, and there's been plenty of blasting going on, and there are notices that go out almost daily letting the public know. So the process for that in Durham is very stringent, as well as, there's state law that deals with that as well.
Just for awareness, it was
Sure.
raised by the community. My last comment is there's a lot of active projects in that area. I was reading about, let's see here, the Village at Carpenter Woods, the Green Gear Street subdivisions, which would add more traffic. I know that you're not adding,
Right.
but have you looked at it in the context of the overall development in that area? And if not, how should I look at that? Thank you.
Well, we weren't required, and when a TIA is not required, there's no scoping or anything like that for us to look at. So if our traffic is so low that a transportation impact analysis is not required, then that analysis doesn't happen. Now, if in some of those other subdivisions, that may be different, and if they contribute more traffic, then they may have to do that analysis, but this one does not.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Aaron, you had clarification.
Tom, if I could just get you to read these back to you and make sure that I have these for the record.
Sure.
On the additional 5 commitments that I have, which is, and the way I would word it is no structures or parking in the floodplain.
Correct.
Okay. That you would cluster the open space in the floodplain.
Correct.
That the 25% tree coverage will be preservation and no replacement.
Correct.
That you'll provide an easement for the greenway.
Correct.
That you'll provide a 50-foot project boundary buffer along Carpenter Road.
Correct.
Great, thank you, that's all.
Thank you.
No other questions, clarifications? Are we ready to move this case forward? All right, may I have a motion to move case Z24000112613 Carpenter Road?
Chair, as it relates to case Z2400001 and annexation BDG 24000042613 Carpenter Road, I make a motion that we move this case forward with a favorable recommendation to City Council.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Cutright, seconded by Commissioner Williams to move case Z2400011 BDG 24000042613 Carpenter Road forward with a favorable recommendation and the proffers that were read this evening. May I have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron.
Yes.
Vice Chair Shigaris.
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright.
Yes.
Commissioner Chakowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Gregory.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Kopak.
Yes.
Commissioner McIver.
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Commissioner Woke.
No.
The motion passes 9-1.
Thank you. We are now moving into the public hearings, the zoning map changes. The first case we have is case Z2300038, 3112 South Alston Avenue. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Cameron. As you said, it's Z2300038 South 3112 South Alston Avenue. The site is 1.75 acre parcel at 3112 South Alston Avenue. The parcel is currently split zoned office and institutional and residential rural. The request is to zone the entire parcel office and institutional with the development plan. Since the development plan commits to only residential uses, the request is consistent with the place type of established residential. As shown, the request is to zone the entire parcel. Next one. There we go. As shown, the request is to zone the entire parcel office and institution with the development plan. The site is surrounded by residential zoning except to the south, which is office and institutional. The aerial map shows that the site is in a predominantly single-family residential area with some industrial uses in the area. The place type map envisions predominantly residential uses in the area, except for a few parcels where neighborhood services are desired. The development plan limits the site to 7 townhouse or detached row house units. Transportation improvements are also committed. 2 neighborhood meetings were held for this case. The first on May 31st, 2023, where 7 community members attended. And a second meeting on September 17th, 2024, where 4 community members attended. The proposal is generally consistent with the place type map designation of established residential due to the limitation of residential uses on the development plan. The proposal is generally consistent with 12 of 23 applicable policies on the comprehensive plan. Staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this time, the chair is opening the public hearing. Is the applicant present? Are they on Zoom? Mike Klein, I see you're on. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, commission members. I'm Mike Klein of MRK Planning Consulting, 7204 Stonecliff Drive, Raleigh, North Carolina. I have what I think is a simple one for you tonight. This is going to be a little bit repetitive after Aaron's presentation, but we're here to request a zoning map change at 3112 South Alston Avenue. This 0.75 acre site in the suburban tier is currently split zoned office, institutional, and rural residential. We seek to convert the rural residential portion of the site to office institutional to contribute to a greater mix of housing opportunities within the context area. So specifically, we seek the zoning map change to allow placement of a maximum of 7 townhouse and or detached row house units on site. We initially were proposing a general rezoning, which appeared to be fine at the time of our pre-submittal conference, but we were subsequently directed by staff to convert our request to rezoning with a text development plan. The primary purpose of the text development plan was to limit allowed uses of the site to residential in order to be consistent with the residential place type designation of the comprehensive plan. And we are amenable to conversion from a general rezoning to rezoning with text development plan as it matches up with our development goal here. We have agreed to 2 other we have agreed to 2 other committed elements related to the street frontage as directed by city staff and NCDOT, a 10-foot wide concrete shared path for bicycle and pedestrian use, and a northbound left turn lane to the site. Just a few quick additional notes about the context area are that the site abuts a rail corridor to the west rear. The surrounding uses are all single-family residential, including the Oakmont neighborhood to the west beyond the railroad. The only other townhouse development in proximity of this site is approximately 860 feet to the south at 3302 South Alston. And those homes are slightly larger than the unit sizes we're proposing or considering at this point. And in addition to planning staff's note about proximity to NCCU, it is also important to note that the site is within half a mile of the boundary of Research Triangle Park. Again, we believe the proposed zoning map change, if granted, will contribute appropriately to a variety of housing stock along this portion of South Alston with some required public improvements and little, if any, adverse impact. At this point, I'll defer to any public comment as well as the commission to guide the rest of the conversation. As always, the owner, Mr. Olumide Oluramad, and I are happy to respond to any questions or concerns you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the community that would like to speak on this? There's no one signed up. Is there anyone on Zoom? Going once, going twice. All righty, we're going to close the public hearing now, and we are now open for commissioner discussion and questions. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Klein, are you the owner of 3116 South Alston as well as 3118 South Alston?
I'm representing the owner of those parcels as well.
So to clarify, the owner has ownership of those parcels and the one in front of us?
Yes.
So I've got a follow-up question because some of the community members felt that this was just one piece of a whole, which raised concern for me. Am I correct to interpret what I know about the 3 parcels in total, that there could be 21 townhomes, not the 7 we're looking at for 3112?
That is correct, and they will be developed as currently allowed by ordinance effective of January 1st of this year that allows for exempt townhouse development of up to 10 units per property, and they are size restricted.
Can you clarify for me what you mean by size restricted, please?
In order to proceed in this fashion, the size restriction is that they do not have a footprint in excess of 1,000 square feet.
And in reading the neighborhood notes, one, Ms. Blue and Ms. Boyd raised a question about traffic, which you responded didn't rise to the level of warning and traffic impact analysis. Was that based on just the 7 units or looking at the total 21?
Well, that's just based on staff review of 3112 South Alston. And NCDOT did look at it as well. And that's what's driving the northbound left turn lane requirement.
And my last question is on tree preservation. Can you clarify, that was another question for the community. Has it been decided how tree preservation would work in this proposal, or is it to be decided?
Well, tree preservation is not required for proceeding under the exempt process that's now allowed. But that being said, there is a tree stand to the rear. We would like to keep much of it for a noise buffer from the rail line. And, like we're thinking 30 to 40 feet deep out of a 230-foot deep site. And beyond that, within the railroad right-of-way, there are additional trees. There's additional forest beyond our property line. And we've left some trees up at the front and to the side. They might actually be on 3116. And we'd like to keep some of those tree stands if we can.
And are you willing, to your comment, to commit to the 30 feet that you mentioned in the back lot to create a buffer tonight?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Are we ready to move this case forward? Yes, may I have a motion?
Chair, as it relates to case Z2300038, 3112 South Austin Avenue, I make a motion that we move this case forward with the additional proffer of a 30-foot tree save to City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Cutright and seconded by Commissioner Williams to move case Z2300038, 3112 South Alston Avenue forward with a favorable recommendation recognizing the additional proffer of the 30-foot tree save. May I have the roll call vote, please?
Yes, we just wanted to make sure that we were clarifying that is a 30-foot tree buffer and not a
Buffer.
30-foot tree save.
Tree,
Two different things in the ordinance to look at. Just want to make sure that we.
tree buffer, let the record.
Both? Should be both in this case.
Well, yes, in this case, it will happen to be both, but when we look at it, when site plan review, when major development review looks at it from a site plan standpoint, they're going to look for a buffer. And so that's how it'll be addressed through the ordinance. So just clarifying that. Thank you. Okay, Chair Cameron.
Yes.
Vice Chair Shigaris.
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright.
Yes.
Commissioner Chakowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Gregory.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Kopak.
Yes.
Commissioner McIver.
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Commissioner Woke.
Yes.
The motion passes 10-0.
Thank you. We are now moving on to case Z2300046 Brickworks. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Cameron. As you said, this is case Z2300046 Brickworks.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Did I say something different?
I thought I heard a yes, and I wasn't sure.
Z2300046 Brickworks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Who's on
Going
first?
once, going twice.
Okay.
Yeah.
The site in question here for this case is just over 95 acres comprising several parcels. The current zoning is industrial, industrial light, and residential urban 5. The proposal is to change the zoning district to Plan Development Residential 19.811 for up to 1,880 dwelling units and 49,500 square feet of non-residential development. The existing place type is mixed-use neighborhood, and staff finds the proposal consistent with the place type. The site is adjacent to industrial uses, some of them light industrial, to the north, west, and east. A single-family residential neighborhood is to the south of the site. The aerial map shows that the site is between I-885 and the Durham Freeway, with residential, industrial, and civic uses surrounding it. The development plan commits to use limitations, including walking trails, native species plantings, 5% of apartments being affordable to 60% of area median income, and a $60,000 donation to Durham Public Schools, among other commitments. The proposed conditions are shown here. Access would be from Angier Avenue, Rowena Avenue, and Miami Boulevard. A stream bisects the site and is shown with 50 and 100-foot buffers as required. An initial neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with UDO requirements on October 25th, 2023. 16 community members were in attendance. A second meeting was held on November 6th, 2024. The proposal is consistent with the place type designation of mixed-use neighborhood. The proposal is consistent with 21 of 25 applicable comprehensive plan policies. Staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this time, the chair is opening the public hearing and will have the applicant present.
Good evening, Chairwoman Cameron, Vice Chair Shigaris, members of the commission. I'm Patrick Byker. I live at 2614 Stewart Drive. I'm an attorney with Morningstar Law Group, and I'm joined here tonight by Dan Jewell, the Regional Director for Thomas & Hutton, here in Durham. Earl Llewellyn, who's our traffic engineer with Kimley Horn, also here in Durham. And then we have Sarah Baxendale, who is the development manager for Cohab Development LLC, doing business as Spacecraft, which is located in Charlotte. I'm here this evening representing Spacecraft, which aspires to transform 95.5 acres that primarily were the former brick pits of the Borden Brick Company into Durham's most pedestrian and transit-oriented development yet, with up to 1,880 dwelling units and 49,500 square feet of non-residential space. We are focused on developing a pedestrian-oriented neighborhood that promotes walkability, sustainability, and a more healthy lifestyle here in Durham. We are consciously targeting the demographic in Durham that does not want to be solely reliant upon their vehicles by utilizing a variety of mobility strategies, such as bike and sharing for residents, shared parking garages, and additional neighborhood services close by with on-site retail spaces. Spacecraft already has developed pedestrian and transit-oriented projects in Charlotte and now wants to achieve the same success here in Durham. There's a substantial group of people in North Carolina who cares about climate change and wishes to work in a shared economy so that car dependency is not a fact of life. And rather than viewing sites like this as a liability, it is time to view sites like this as golden opportunities for infill. That perspective has been a hallmark of Spacecraft since their inception, and that is reflected in their corporate slogan, better homes, walkable neighborhoods for you and the planet. Next, I wish to highlight that this site has transit service on Go Durham Route 2 that provides direct service to downtown, employment opportunities along T.W. Alexander Drive, and direct connection to shopping, restaurants, and a Harris Teeter at Briar Creek. In addition to that, this site is only about 1 mile away from hundreds of jobs in the Regional Commerce Center developed by Skinnell Properties over the past few years off of Ellis Road. In addition, the Palmer Edge Business Park, recently approved by City Council, is only about 1 mile away from this site. In other words, our place type map is working. We are creating that 15-minute city that we have talked about by locating housing and jobs in very close proximity. And to address other needs, I hope all the planning commissioners took note of the text commitment Mr. Kane referenced to develop 49,500 square feet of non-residential space. And in addition to that, there will be at least 5,000 linear feet of walking trails. Reducing reliance on cars saves money for residents of Brickworks, making the overall housing and transit costs of Brickworks residents more affordable. And in addition, Spacecraft is going to dedicate 5% of the apartment units as affordable in order to provide housing for lower income families in Durham. Accordingly, this development plan checks 21 out of 25 boxes in terms of comprehensive plan policy consistency. And so for all these reasons, we respectfully ask for your recommendation of approval. Our team will be happy to answer any questions, and we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? There's no one that signed up, but is there anyone here? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium and state your name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Cesar Belito, 225 East End Avenue. One of the questions that we have from those meetings was water pressure. How is that going to affect the area? I didn't see, or maybe I missed on the proposal anything related to water for the area. It would be great if the town or the developers have a plan for that. The other thing I have is traffic. 118 units will add flow to East End, right from 70 to 147 in engineered. Is there any plan to, or proposal to modify or expansion of engineered, maybe East End, that connects that side of town from 70 to 147? Not to mention that East End Avenue currently it's a 35-mile-per-hour road. I wish it could be less than that, but that's a different discussion. I just want to just add that. One thing that I don't think we got answered during those two meetings was the mixed use and why it can be a single family. I know there is a conclusion at the end of the report. I just want to understand what was the process for that, not to be able to be single use or single families in that.
Thank you, sir.
Lot.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the audience? Is there anyone on Zoom? Let me see, that would like to ask questions of the applicant? All right, would the applicant like to, or the city, about the water, and then some other questions to be answered?
Good evening, Commissioners. Dan Jewell, Thomas & Nutton Engineers, Landscape Architects. Yes, we've looked closely at the water pressure. We know that the water pressure out there at the site right now may be marginal, but during our site plan approval process and engineering process, we fully expect that we'll be upgrading, substantially upgrading some city water lines out in that part of the community to bring the pressure up to where it needs to be. And also, I won't speak for Mr. Llewellyn, but you all saw the text commitments relative to traffic on the development plan as well. So it was a very robust TIA that was done with quite a few recommendations. And of course, we are agreeing to incorporate all of those recommendations of the TIA as part of the approval. As to why mixed use and no single family, I'd almost like Mr. Kane to answer that.
Sure. The place type map as shown for this area is mixed-use neighborhood. The idea being that this is an area closer to the city. It's within the urban tier. We want it to be a higher density area and an area that people can start to create a 15-minute community, right, as we envision, where you don't have to go so far to be able to access neighborhood services, retail, employment, and so forth. We want those to be able to all be within a relatively close area, and that's why this area was designated as a mixed-use neighborhood on the place type map.
Thank you. Yes.
Just to add some further color to the traffic question, this site has been.
I know
I'm sorry.
you spoke before, but on this case.
Yes, sorry. Earl Llewellyn, Kimley Horn. This site benefits from being very close to the US 70 corridor, also having good access to Andrew Avenue, both of which have excess capacity. That, nevertheless, we are proposing a robust list of improvements that I think are included in your staff report, primarily along Andrew Avenue with turn lanes at major intersections and potential signals if warranted to address the site traffic impact. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I don't see anyone else in the audience or on Zoom that would like to speak. Therefore, I am closing the public hearing and moving this case now open for commissioner discussion and questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, sir, you have to come up to the podium and speak in the microphone. I'm unclosing the public hearing.
Will these units be for lease or sale, rentals, or? Thank you.
Members of the commission, the dwelling units will be a mixture of rental and for sale.
All right, thank you. All right, now, the public hearing is closed, and we are moving this case forward for commission discussion and questions. Commissioner Kopak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Cameron. Appreciate the presentation and also the resident comment. Glad to see about some of the efforts around making it bike and pedestrian friendly and accessible. the largely consistent nature of it with the comprehensive plan, took note of, as well as the commitment to the contribution to the dedicated Durham Housing Fund. So definitely want to make note of those. A few questions for the applicant. The first is just curious about your assessment of the impact of the development on the wetlands and based on kind of the multiple stream crossings. How was that taken into consideration? To what extent was conservation sort of built into the development plan?
Yes, Dan Jewell again, great question. So as you can tell from the existing conditions map included in the report, there are quite a few streams and wetlands on this property. Even though most of those wetlands were man-made, if any of you know the history of this site, board and brick had been located here since the turn of the century, and they dug a lot of holes to get clay to make bricks. But be that as it may, they are now wetland areas. So what we have committed to do with the plan that you see is we're impacting very little of the wetlands and the stream buffers. We're basically, crossing them in a few places, but the goal is to leave them largely untouched. Obviously, we'll be managing our runoff from the site as is required by the Durham ordinance to treat most of that stormwater before it gets down into the wetland areas. And I think it's fair to say that one of the characteristics of this and doing at least 5,000 square feet of greenway trails is we want to celebrate the natural environment on this site. We want to get those trails down and get people close to the wetland areas to see how nature has healed itself over the last 50 or 60 years since they stopped making bricks out there. But it's very much an integral feature of the land plan.
Okay, thank you. The next question, I know there's a benefit of just having the units, and I did note some commitment to affordable housing as well as the contribution. However, since it's only based on the number of apartments, I think it comes out to just 0.02% dedicated to affordable housing. And I do recognize there's the contribution, but what thinking went into that, and what is the possibility of dedicating a higher percentage to affordable housing on this site, given the almost 2,000 units that are proposed?
Commissioner Kopak, it'll be 5% of the total number of apartments built. That total count has to be
on the apartments,
at site plan.
But on the total baseline, the total denominator, it comes out to a lot less.
Right, but it's still going to be 5% of the total number of apartments. We anticipate a fairly small percentage will be townhouses. The vast majority of the dwelling units will be apartments, and of that majority, 5% will be affordable.
And so that's what the plan is. What was the discussion about ways to get that number and percentage up given the total number of units? Is that something that was discussed or would be considered?
We have to ride the proffer on affordability as it is currently written, Commissioner Kopak. 5% of the apartment units will be made available at 60% AMI.
Okay. Also, I know there's been a lot of talk about pedestrian infrastructure, and there is a bus access not far from this site. Is that built into the plan as well to make easy and ready access to bus routes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then finally, on that north end with the light industrial, there's the scrap metal recycling. There's the looks like some sort of concrete or stone work happening there. What sort of buffer or plan is in place between the residential and that light industrial?
The ordinance will require landscape buffers along there. We didn't want to get into the details on the development plan, but certainly as we work through the detailed design of the site plan, that property has changed hands several times in the last couple of years. And as you said, right now it's wall recycling. It's become a recycling center, and frankly, it's a mess. I'll be on record saying that. So we'll certainly want to incorporate lots of new vegetation in there. Otherwise, we'll not be able to sell or lease units. People don't want to be able to look at that. So that'll be definitely something we'll need to do to be able to attract people to move to this community.
My time's up, so I'll stop. Just if anybody else wants to check in about engagement with the Horton Public Housing Community, and whether there was any outreach there, but I'll pause and not expect a response at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Cutright?
Chair, I'll take the suggestion from Commissioner Kopak and ask about community outreach and what that's looked like. Have you had any engagement? I know typically you're sending out notices to homeowners, but clearly there's a nice rental community around there. Have you had conversations with them? Do you understand if there are potential concerns from their perspective?
So the community outreach to date on this has been the 2 virtual meetings that were mentioned. There were 16 folks on the first one, and probably 5 of those were on part of the development team. The one that we had last week, there were only 4 people on that neighborhood meeting that weren't part of the development team. So we have had outreach, frankly, for the scale of this project, and I've worked on a lot of projects over the years. There were, very, very few people who showed any concerns to us. Now, certainly if people reach out to us between now and the city council meeting, we will do everything we can to meet with them and engage with them, including the gentleman who spoke here this evening. But for a project of this magnitude, the community interest has been extremely low.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Chair. Before I ask some questions, could I clarify a couple things? One is the question about light industrial buffers, which I appreciated. My Commissioner, are you committing? I heard you talk about it, but I did not hear a commitment or a proffer to actually provide a buffer in those areas between. I know you're going to have a hard time selling, I got it, but I'd like a little bit more firm commitment in that regard.
Well, certainly the UDO requires buffers, so we can't commit to something that the UDO requires already. In terms of how much wider are those going to be, I don't know. We'll have to get into final site design to figure out what that means.
I think Aaron wants to add something.
Yeah.
Sure. So against industrial light development, and I had it here and it went away on me. Let's see here. This would be against industrial light. They would have a minimum what we call a 0.8 opacity buffer, which would be a minimum of 22.5 feet, and section 9.4 of the UDO would have what kind of vegetation would need to be planted there. Against industrial, it would be 37.5 feet. And it would be a 1.0 opacity. So you can look in the UDO. I'm not going to read through all this.
No, please don't.
Look in the UDO as to what the landscaping requirements would be.
And Aaron, I believe the recycling center is heavy industrial, not light industrial.
It is industrial, so that would require the minimum 37.5 foot buffer with the vegetation that is provided, and that's required in the ordinance. We wouldn't even want them to commit to that because they already have to do it.
Okay, so industrial, light industrial, different buffers, okay.
Correct.
My colleague, Commissioner, mentioned a housing fund contribution. I saw school contribution. Is there a housing fund as well that I missed?
Yes, sir. There is a proffer of a one-time payment to Durham Public Schools in the amount of $60,000.
Right, but I was asking housing. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. All right. With my time, and I'll, as quick as I can, maybe avoid a second round. I heard you talk about actions regarding the water pressure, which is a major concern for me, given both this project and other projects around the area. There's a number of active projects that are adding. Would you repeat what you're committing to for sewer or water pressure, as I heard you talk about before?
So the city and the North Carolina Building Code stipulate minimums. I mean, at least this much flow and pressure for different types of uses and commercial uses and multifamily residential units are actually some of the most robust. We will have to put improvements in place and demonstrate to the Durham Public Works Department, the Durham Inspections Department, that those improvements will deliver that amount of flow and water pressure before we can get the first building permit.
So do you have a definition of what those improvements will be? I know the project has been laid out as is, and looking at the surrounding area, I'm more interested in details. I understand the objective.
Yeah.
Do you have details?
So we know that we're going to have to upgrade the existing water line in Anger Avenue because it's kind of the tail end of the system.
What avenue? I'm sorry.
Anger Avenue, yes.
Sorry to be going through these.
That's all right.
quickly. The other issue I have is traffic capacity, both in terms of this project as well as the Lynn Road townhouses adding 36 townhomes, Fox Crossing adding 320 apartments, and Hoover Road adding 402 townhouses. So if I look at that collectively, that's a lot of impact on the road that's already at capacity. And I appreciate what you mentioned about turn lanes, but it doesn't address the root issue of a lot of cars in limited space. I don't know if you have an answer to that other than have you considered changing the mix of apartments to townhomes to reduce that impact and stay within the overall layout of the area to reduce traffic, other than, because I had a math issue. This is, man, I'm a math guy. I was looking at 1,000, sorry, papers are here, 1,880 residential units, and it says 100 townhouses and 100 apartments. So I'm trying to reconcile the math between how do you get to 1,880 units within 100 apartments. So maybe you can clarify that. I've run out of time. I'll take it later if I could, Chair. I'll give it back to you. Thank you.
So I think part of the question was the 100 apartments or the 100, those are minimums we had to commit to just to demonstrate to the planning staff that we're meeting the intent of doing a mixed residential development, not just one or the other. In no way, shape, or form are we only going to do 100 apartments and probably not 100 townhomes. I don't know what else I can say about that other than the traffic impact analysis was based on 1,880 units, and the improvements that we're committing to putting in place are maintaining the level of service that the city requires that we maintain.
Commissioner Cartwright?
I just wanted to say one thing as I go back and as I think about your comment regarding community engagement and 2,000 units going up and there being limited community engagement. I think what that speaks to as we start thinking about responsibility here, understanding that there's a heavy rental population and that there was lack of engagement, I think developers, especially in rezoning cases, should consider their level of responsibility in reaching out to the community as we think about equitable development in communities. It's clear that this will have a very big impact on the neighborhood, yet there was no effort, I don't think, outside of what was required or what is required with the UDO to reach out to the community and engage them on something that will have a significant impact on their livelihood and how they will move going forward. I think there should be a sense of responsibility there. So consider that going forward. That's a comment, particularly on a project of this magnitude. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Gregory?
Just a real quick question. So in evaluating the existing conditions map, there's clearly a lot of variable topography, a lot of slopes, thanks probably due in large part to the history of the site. I'm just curious, from an engineering and construction perspective, how much grading do you anticipate needing to be executed on site? That seems like a lot of earth moving.
there will be, Jewel again, there will be a good amount of grading on the site. We suspect there'll be some retaining walls here and there, that sort of thing. But we intend to have the various development areas happen in relatively small pods, and by small, I mean 5 acres, 8 acres, that sort of thing, so that we can place things at various elevations across the site rather than just scraping everything and starting fresh and anew. But the site has challenges. As I said, it was used to make bricks for 80 years before the plant shut down in the 1980s. So there will be grading, but you know, again, we'll put all of the stormwater control measures in, the sedimentation control measures in, and that sort of thing to make sure that we protect the environmental features on the site and downstream properties as well.
All the commissioners had their first questions. Vice Chair Shigeros.
Question for the applicant. I saw on the package there was some federal potential wetlands there, probably some of the pits that had been dug for the brick making pub. What kind of trouble do you anticipate or challenges from, additional federal regulations?
So we have had a environmental biologist on board since day one on this project. They have identified which streams are jurisdictional. They also flagged all the wetlands. They have had the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the state DEQ out there to confirm the delineation of those wetlands. We are doing proposing a little bit of the impact to the wetlands, but those will require permitting through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Our biologist has a lot of experience with them, and we have minimized that to the point that they feel that we will likely get those permits for that small amount of impact. But at the end of the day, if the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers does not issue those permits, we will not be able to impact those wetlands. So we'll have to pull back the project from working on those.
Mr. Kobach, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. So clearly I was mistaken about my belief in the contribution to the dedicated Durham Housing Fund. That was for the public schools. Given the magnitude of the project and the small scale of the affordable housing, is it something that has been discussed with the developer? Is that something that you could proffer a contribution to that fund in lieu of additional units?
This is just a guesstimate at this time, Commissioner Kopech, but we're estimating that the site will have 1,440 apartments. So if you'll give me a New York minute, I can tell you that the affordable housing proffer then turns into 72 affordable housing dwelling units. So that 5% has been, I think, a fairly good benchmark for the development community, considering that there's absolutely no public subsidy of this project in spite of the magnitude of the infrastructure and the that Mr. Jewell referred to in regards to water lines, road improvements, sewer improvements. So that 5%, I think, does translate into a significant benefit for our community.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood. So you're saying that the 5% of the apartments that are expected, you think will come out to
72
ballpark. It's just that you included the minimum of 100 to be in compliance with the mixed residential?
That's correct.
But you think it will be more than
anticipate that? Somewhere between 1,400 and 1,500 apartments.
Of it will be apartments?
Yes, sir.
All
That's
right.
our anticipation at this time. Obviously, site plan, we have to figure all that out.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then I have a question for staff relating to Commissioner Cutright's questions about engagement. And, this is one of the areas that's been designated as disadvantaged per the climate and equity screening tool. And I know the staff takes efforts to include that information for us. But I'm often not sure what to do with it. It helps us to bring another lens to our evaluation, but Is there, or, maybe it's not fair to put this to you, but could there be additional sort of standards that are required for engagement if we do give it that designation?
That is something that we could certainly consider through our engagement policy. It's not something that's currently in the policy, so it's not something that we can enforce or mandate at this time, but I think it's a great idea and it's something we can look at.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kopak, we will state on the record that we'll hold another neighborhood meeting between now and the city council public hearing, and we will undertake extra efforts besides mailing. Certainly, I've gone door to door in places like Bragtown, so I know what that's like. So we'll state that on the record. We'll have another neighborhood meeting, and we'll investigate options besides first-class mail to reach residents in this area of Durham.
Commissioner, I'm going to go to Johnson first and then to you. Yes.
Thank you, Chair, and I commend you for taking that action on the additional community meeting. And my questions are not to take away from what you've already put on the table and converting something that was 60 years a brick-making community. But these concerns are legitimate in terms, in my view, of the all-overall impact. And one of them, going back to schools, if my math is correct, is there's going to be a sizable impact on what could be in the school system. If my math is correct, based on the application, 316 new students, impact of about $1.7 million on schools' operational cost. And additional, if they, given the fact that most of these are near capacity, an additional $31.6 million in terms of capital impact against a 60,000 proffer. The question is that the balance doesn't meet the reasonableness test for me. How would you like to address my question about, is it reasonable and are you expecting to do more?
We can't answer that on the fly tonight, but we'll certainly evaluate it as we go forward to the city council in addition to the neighborhood outreach that we're doing. But we certainly understand the challenges that Durham Public Schools is facing at this time. Certainly, Mr. Jewell and I were proud to support the bond referendum that Durham Public Schools had approved. Our group endorsed it so that there would be another $400+ million in capital expenditure in Durham. So we appreciate the concern. I will certainly review that, but at this point in time, we're going to maintain the proffer that's been put forward.
I appreciate your consideration. I'll comment that just for future reference, it's probably something to have anticipated, given that we've had similar conversations through these proceedings, looking at what has been mentioned in terms of the different kind of drivers to make this add up at the end of the day, consistent with the UDO requirements. So my expectation would be that it would have been kind of factored into this discussion a little earlier, notwithstanding, thank you for the 60,000 that was proffered, but that's just my 2 cents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gregory?
Yeah, this is another question for the applicant. So just want to say I'm genuinely impressed by the transit-oriented approach and efforts to integrate natural features into the site development. With that all being said, looking at the engineering renderings, I'm a little concerned that the 7% canopy preservation, it's almost entirely all in the southern portion of the site, and there's tons of wetlands in the northern half too. So I'm curious if you've considered increasing the canopy preservation number, which I believe is currently at the UDO minimum, to account for just how pervasive the wetlands are across the site.
So a good question. So the 7% on our plan is just parroting the minimum required by the UDO. But if you know state law and Durham law and federal law for stream buffers and wetlands, which are a substantial part of the site as you go look at that existing and proposed plans. We cannot touch that vegetation. So it will remain in place as is, other than where we have a couple of stream crossings and the small amount of wetlands impact that we're going to request from the Corps of Engineers if they should ask us to do that. But that being said, I think we'd be happy to recalculate what that tree coverage, tree preservation actually is based on the substantial acreage that's in those environmentally sensitive areas, and take back, when we get back to the city council, have that larger number in there as a tree coverage commitment. Yeah, that's easy to do. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioners? None? All right, are we ready to move this case forward? May I have a motion to move this case forward?
Chair, as it relates to case Z2300046 Brickworks, I make a motion that we move this case forward with a favorable recommendation to City Council.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Cutright and seconded by Commissioner Williams to move case Z2300046 Brickworks forward with a favorable recommendation. Do we need to mention the proffers? All right.
I don't believe there were any additional proffers at this time.
Good to go. All right. Forward with a favorable recommendation. May I have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron.
Yes.
Vice Chair Shigeris.
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright.
Yes.
Commissioner Chakowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Gregory.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Kopak.
Yes.
Commissioner McIver.
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Commissioner Woke.
No.
Motion passes 9-1.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to have a quick 2-minute recess while we change chairs here for a few minutes. I should be back in a few minutes. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're going to recess for 15 minutes.
Have you noticed more electric cars on the road recently? They are gaining popularity as more models become available, and charging infrastructure continues to expand. Let's discuss some basics of electric driving. There are two types of electric vehicles. Battery electric vehicles are powered solely by an electric motor with rechargeable batteries. Plug-in hybrid electric vehicles are powered by a combination of a gasoline engine and an electric motor with rechargeable batteries. Electric vehicles offer drivers multiple benefits, including fuel and maintenance savings, enhanced vehicle performance, a fun driving experience, and environmental friendliness. There are many types of electric vehicles to choose from, and new models continue to enter the market. For your typical passenger vehicles, there are electric sedans, SUVs, and trucks. For medium and heavy-duty vehicles, there are electric vans, buses, tractor-trailers, and specialty work trucks. And we can't forget about the two-wheel vehicles. Electric motorcycles and bikes are quickly becoming rider favorites. All of these vehicles get their fuel from the electric grid by plugging in to charge. There are 3 levels of charging: Level 1, Level 2, and DC fast charge. Level 1 charging uses an adapter to plug into a standard 120-volt outlet, providing around 3 to 5 miles of range per hour. Level 2 charging uses a 240-volt outlet and provides 12 to 60 miles of range per hour. Level 2 charging stations can be installed at home and are commonly found in public locations, including shopping centers, downtown communities, multifamily housing, and workplaces. DC fast charge stations provide the quickest charge, adding about 60 to 80 miles of range in 20 minutes. DC fast charging is usually located in high-traffic public spots and along highway corridors. While drivers tend to do most of their charging at home, there are multiple apps and websites to help locate public charging stations. With electric vehicle and charging options growing daily, drivers are zipping around their communities and traveling the country cleanly and quietly, with plenty of places to plug in along the way.
There's no place like home. Home is where the heart is.
Hey, can I help you? Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
It is our place of safety and warmth. Home is where love resides, memories are created, and laughter warms the heart. That's why the Durham Human Relations Division is committed to enforcing the Fair Housing Act, which prohibits unlawful discrimination based on race, color, disability, religion, sex, familial status, or national origin.
Owning a home provides a sense of financial stability, family, community, and pride. But housing prices are now higher than ever, making it hard for many Durham residents to afford their first home. That's why the City of Durham is offering the Down Payment Assistance Program to support eligible individuals with up to $80,000 in 0% interest forgivable loans to purchase a house within the city limits. Visit this site or call to find out if you qualify for the program.
I was looking for an opportunity, and an old friend of mine suggested that I apply at Go Durham. The community really relies on us, on Go Durham public transportation.
Well, I like driving a bus because of the friendly culture. I love it in the morning when people greet me, good morning, they give me a friendly wave, they appreciate you. And that goes a long way being a bus driver in Go Durham.
Anything can be achieved here. You can come in at the bottom and you will be able to excel in a fairly short amount of time. Here, I started as an operator and I'm here now as an operator training specialist. So as long as you stick to it, you can excel.
The perfect candidate that would excel at Go Durham is someone with tenacity, someone with drive, someone who wants to make a difference for their community.
You have to be people-oriented, you have to be experienced, and you have to be on hands, ready to go, but with the proper training, it's just like driving a car.
So as a new driver with road training, come in and you see me and I'm gonna make sure you have all the tools to succeed.
They give you a lot of input and they work with you step by step, so you won't be alone in this.
To anyone considering working for Go Durham, you won't regret it. Please come, please apply. We would love to have you join the Go Durham team.
count on Durham for awesome adventures and great bike shops.
I know I can count on Durham for great sports in every season.
I always count on Durham for amazing cultural events.
I count on Durham for its innovative ideas and the determination to bring them to life.
I count on Durham for community and a place for everyone.
I count on Durham to do a good job and to celebrate our success.
Did you know that the city of Durham counts on these individuals? In a city of more than 260,000 people, you're looking at residents who are making their voices count, people who care about the past, the present, and the future of the city of Durham. And you know what? It doesn't matter how mature
or young,
whether you're passionate about the economy, the arts scene,
or the plight of the homeless.
In fact, we have nearly 30 boards, committees, and commissions that you can participate on.
The requirements are to be a Durham City resident and be current on your Durham City and county taxes.
Durham is your home. You can count on Durham to be there for you.
Can we count on you to be there for our city?
Can we count on you to be there for Durham?
Can we count on you to be there for our city?
Can we count on you to be there for Durham?
So come on, get involved. Apply today. We can count on Durham, but can Durham count on you?
Totally up to you. If you're there, if you change your mind, but, okay, thank you. Well, I meant in terms of Thanksgiving,
Everybody ready?
We're ready.
Everybody ready? Calling the meeting back to order. We will now move forward with case Z2400001 Pickett Apartments. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Cameron. Let's just go ahead and go to the second. There you go. The site for this case is just over 6 acres in the suburban tier off Pickett Road. The current zoning is residential suburban 20. The applicant has requested a change to Plan Development Residential 36.176. The place type map is apartment and townhouse neighborhood and recreation and open space. The request is consistent with these place types, and staff would like to state for the record right now that there is an error in the staff report, and the current daily trips on Pickett Road is 3,700, not 7,000. That was a typo error. The surroundings, we'll go to the next slide, thank you. The surrounding zoning districts are residential suburban 20 and residential suburban multifamily to this site. The aerial map shows Durham Academy to the north of the site across Pickett Road and residential development to the west. To the east is the Sandy Creek, which has the trail and a park. As shown, the place type map calls for townhouses or apartments on site to be consistent with the apartment and townhouse neighborhood place type designation. The eastern portion of the site is recreation and open space to correspond to the existing floodplain. The applicant has several proffers, including income-restricted units, a donation to Durham Public Schools, native plantings, and no buildings or parking in the floodplain, amongst the others listed here. Here is the proposed conditions according to the development plan. The development plan limits building to outside the floodplain and outside of the riparian buffers. 2 neighborhood meetings have been held in accordance with UDO requirements, the first being on November 28th, 2023, where 44 community members attended, and a second meeting was held on October 29th, 2024. The proposal is generally consistent with the place type map designation of apartment and townhouse neighborhood and recreation and open space, and is consistent with 15 of 23 applicable policies of the comprehensive plan. Staff and the applicant are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this time, the chair is opening the public hearing, and we will have the applicant present.
Okay, can you all see that PowerPoint cover page or cover? Yes. That's the extent of my technical expertise. Okay. Good evening, Chairwoman Cameron, Vice Chair Chigueras, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Patrick Biker. I live at 2614 Stewart Drive. I'm an attorney with Morningstar Law Group. I'm here tonight representing Ascension Durham Fund, LLC, that hopes to develop 140 apartments on the south side of Pickett Road, a little less than half a mile west of 15501 Bypass. Joining me tonight is our site engineer with Civil Consultants and former Pittsboro Town Commissioner, Michael Fiacco. At the outset, it is important to highlight that we are following the place type map, which I think wisely designated this site for an apartment and townhouse neighborhood. Since the townhouses on Coachman's Way are only about 500 feet to the east, this 140-unit apartment neighborhood complements those existing townhomes very well. I want to commend the Planning Commission and the City Council for the many hours of public hearings that were held to receive input about the place type map. I think the apartment and townhouse neighborhood designation for this site is 100% correct. As you can see from this GIS aerial slide, with the exception of the schools and the churches in this part of town, and with the exception of some townhouses to the east and Solista Independent Living next door to the west, it appears that the vast majority of the area along Pickett Road west of 15501 has been developed entirely as single-family detached housing. My belief is that our new comprehensive plan promotes a diversity of housing types to accommodate Durham's growing and increasingly diverse population, and that is exactly what this zoning map change will do. Next, I wish to emphasize the roadway characteristics that are highlighted on page 5 of your staff report. As was mentioned a moment ago, the current traffic volume on Pickett Road is 3,700 cars per day, with a capacity of 12,500. Now, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that there is some congestion when Durham Academy student drop-off occurs during the morning rush hour period. But that is no different than any other school in Durham. Beyond that, Pickett Road is functioning, based on those corrected numbers, at 30% of its capacity. My belief is that many persons who are here tonight in opposition to this development are opposed due to traffic concerns. In response to that, it seems to me that the overall thrust of our new comprehensive plan is to promote infill and higher density as opposed to expansion into the outlying areas with lower density. So if we cannot build apartments in close proximity to townhouses in an area of Durham that has been developed for several decades on a road that is operating at 30% of its capacity, where can we build apartments? Now, even though Pickett Road is operating at 30% of its capacity, this project will be constructing a 3-lane section for Pickett Road along the frontage of this site, and that will also include a 10-foot multi-use paved path. I bring this up because that road improvement will cost about $500,000, and that needs to be amortized over a maximum of 140 apartments. Accordingly, that means that about $3,500 per apartment needs to be allocated to this road improvement in order to create safe turning movements. We recognize that is very important since this location is fairly close, I'd say fewer than 5 miles away, from our region's largest employer, Duke University Medical Center. Lastly, I want to touch on what appears to be a misconception about the location of these 140 apartments. I appreciate Mr. Kane showing the excerpt from our development plan. I want to highlight that our building envelope, which is shown on sheet number 3 of the development plan, is approximately 250 feet away from the closest walking trail in the area, going down to Sandy Creek Park. Accordingly, this development has no impact on the existing trails in the area, some of which are on private property, like Crescent Baptist Church and Church of the Good Shepherd. I also want to note the text commitment for income-restricted units, which I think is strong, given the relatively low unit count of only 140. Most of the apartment complexes I have worked on during my career have been in the 250 to 300 unit range. That is, to my understanding, a unit count that creates efficiencies of scale, both for infrastructure and for on-site amenities. Due to the need to create a compact, just over 6-acre building site at this location and be a good environmental steward, the unit count is capped at 140. I think that cap of 140 apartments balances the competing interests between being a good neighbor and complying with the place type map designation for an apartment and townhouse neighborhood. And so for all those reasons, we respectfully ask for your recommendation of approval. Mr. Fiacco and I will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to call the folks who have signed up to speak. I'll call you about 3 at a time so you're ready to come after the next person. And I do recognize that there's a discrepancy from the website and to what our new procedures are, rules of procedures for the Planning Commission. And in general, it is about 2 minutes per person for the public and community comments. And if I butcher your name, because I can't read it, forgive me in advance. I'll do the best I can. So first we have Marty Wackor. Yes, and you remember to come up, state your name and your address. After that, we have Richard Grusin and Andrea Caruso. So if you can get ready after he gets done, that would be great.
Good evening. My name is Marty Wacko. I'm the Assistant Security Director for Durham Academy, which is located at 3601 Ridge Road. I'm I'm here tonight specifically to talk about two concerns, which would be parking and traffic. I understand that there's the 140 units that are proposed, but according to the information I received, there would be only 154 parking spots available for those residents. The roadway that that we're talking about improving, so right now doesn't have any type of curbside parking. The road where the apartments are proposed to be, it's a grade that goes up to a traffic light about a block away. Durham Academy currently has a driveway on that same roadway, on that same slope, that we only have one way, which is entering, because to leave that property using that driveway is very dangerous. The light, like I said, is a block away. It's on a blind hill, and traffic coming eastbound has a hard time stopping if somebody's using that driveway to pull off. So my concern would be making sure that there was a traffic study to ensure that whatever the driveway situations for the apartments would be safe, not only for the residents of the apartments, but also the community. The second thing I want to talk about is basically the traffic itself. It was mentioned that Durham Academy, we do handle traffic. We hire off-duty Durham police officers to assist with that, to ensure that the community isn't stuck in traffic trying to leave their homes, go to their jobs during school hours and events. So I just want to let you know that I'm happy to hear that you want to be a good community member, because I think that's important, because this community is very valuable to the school and to each other.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That 2 minutes goes quick, y'all, so when you get up there.
Hi, thank you for hearing me. My name is Richard Grusin. I live at 6 Marchmont Court in Colony Hill. On most mornings, I walk from my home to Sandy Creek Park. The park is a jewel in the city of Durham's park system. I'm here today to speak for the park. This proposed development fails to meet several planning guidelines involving green building policies, building in floodplains, green infrastructure, or innovative stormwater practices. These omissions are alarming in a proposal to build a 140-unit apartment building on property that itself includes Sandy Creek's floodways and floodplain, as well as the often flooded paved path connecting Pickett Road to the park, a path which provides disabled access to the park. If any site merited green building policies and infrastructure and innovative stormwater practices, this is the site. The runoff caused by the impervious surfaces in the planned development would encroach upon the floodplain in violation of city and state regulations, although in fact the development might not physically build upon the floodplain. The increased downslope runoff, the highest part of the park or the site is 100 feet above the creek, produced by the complex would count by law as encroaching upon the floodplain. This development will lead to more frequent and severe flooding events that would impact not only the park, but also Durham Academy athletic fields directly across Pickett Road. Because of the dramatically increased risk of flooding from this project, as well as its impact on the water quality of Sandy Creek, I request that this proposal be referred back to planning staff for further review with local, state, and federal agencies to determine more exactly the impact of this 140 apartment development on Sandy Creek Park. Thanks, and I've given you a longer version of this to read and some slides.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Caruso, and I am here on behalf of Durham Academy, which is located at 3601 Ridge Road in Durham. The density of these development plans and the increase in impervious surfaces so close to Sandy Creek floodplain and in an ecologically diverse wetland and forested area threaten our friends at Sandy Creek Park and the ecosystems. This park is an ecological treasure that is utilized by many community members and our school. For example, for the past 7 years as a science faculty member, I've taken my students to Sandy Creek for lab activities. As recently as October 7th, I took students to the park for a lab and had to drive the students, although it is less than a mile walk, to the park because the pathway, Sandy Creek Trail, was inundated after recent rains in late September and October. Tomorrow, we're taking several dozen 10th graders to the park for community service. To help them maintain their park trails. Our faculty are responsible for students safely crossing Pickett Road for this activity. The existing floodplain maps, I'll note about my previous comment, are from 2018, and the current requirements for developers to anticipate for 10-year floods seems short-sighted, considering how prone this area already is to experiencing flooding and the increased storm intensity we experience in this area. Related to traffic, I also wanted to note, pardon me, that this development, as others have noted, will also increase traffic on Pickett Road with little consideration and infrastructure for road crossing safety across Pickett Road, especially since sidewalk additions are limited to the span of the developed property. The traffic safety issues also extend to local wildlife. Sandy Creek Park Trail, the park itself, and connected vegetated pathways along sewer line easements serve as habitat corridors for wildlife. These corridors are becoming increasingly rare with deforestation and residential development. I fear for the residents of this developed property will, in fact, be increased risk of vehicular accidents with deer and other wildlife crossing Pickett Road. If rezoning and development of this parcel is to be undertaken, I strongly urge this commission to require a traffic study and more current evaluation of the Sandy Creek floodplain.
Thank you. Next, we have Andy Braun. That was the discussion. We all concluded with the name. And then we have Tina Bessies, and then Helen Fisher. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for your service. My name is Adam Browdy, and I'm speaking on behalf of Durham Academy. Our address is 3130 Pickett Road, which is directly across the street from the planned development. My goal in being here this evening is not just to reiterate positions we've already shared with the Developers Council, but to encourage all of you on the Planning Commission to exercise the leverage you possess to ensure this project is completed in such a way that it benefits our entire community. We believe that to be deemed a success, this development must not only provide needed housing, it must also safeguard the lives of pedestrians, runners, cyclists, and motorists. Moreover, it must minimize flooding along Sandy Creek. We strongly agree with the need for a traffic study. However, in the interest of time, I'll focus my comments on two other topics. First, the 10-foot path, which as presented will run alongside Pickett Road, but importantly, only for the length of the property up for rezoning. Per Mr. Ghosh, who is not here this evening, everyone thinks it's a good idea for the path to extend from Ridge Road to the existing Sandy Creek Trail. This, of course, is true for all sorts of reasons, the most important of which is safety. Left unsaid by Mr. Ghosh was that it was someone else's problem to solve to ensure the path connects beyond the property lines of the development. I would suggest this is only true if you allow it to be so. If, however, you condition your recommendation to the City Council on the creation of a completed path, the developers would have an incentive to pursue constructive dialogue with all relevant parties. Again, if everyone thinks it's a good idea, let's make it happen. The alternative of leaving a path that ends on either side of the property is absurd. For the record, Durham Academy would be happy to participate in such conversations as appropriate. Separately, I would like to raise concerns about the project's plan for water retention. In our conversations with Mr. Ghosh, he acknowledged that the project has been designed to conform to the 10-year flood zone. Given our state's recent history with Helene, it seems self-evident that such a standard is irrelevant. While I suspect a 100-year flood will occur far more frequently than that, at the very least, the Planning Commission can do its part in risk mitigation by requiring developers to adhere to a more stringent standard starting now. As a final thought, we ask you and the Commission to not just push this project through the pipeline, but to press the developers to implement measures that will result in a better project for all of us. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
My name is Tina Bessius. I am a lifelong Durham resident at 1604 Cliff Street, and I am a teacher and sustainability coordinator at Durham Academy. I speak as a commuting cyclist who rides the length of Pickett Road every day, and I see that indeed there is enough space for the cars and for a cyclist where there are 3 lanes, which is most of the length of the road. The real pain point is by Sandy Creek and by the property that is proposed for rezoning. That's where it is extremely narrow, the shoulders fall off, and we have this really attractive park that so many people are trying to get to, but on foot, with dogs, with strollers, with bicycles, with binoculars to watch birds. There are so many people trying to get there, and it is extremely difficult and dangerous. The building of a meaningful 10-foot wide path from Ridge Road to the beginning of the Sandy Creek Trail would really solve a significant problem in this area. With a 10-foot path that just starts and stops in the middle, we get nothing. So we really urge the Commission to explore the possibility of improving that path, and I leave it to others to discuss the flooding issue in the park, which is also very significant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Helen Fisher. I live at 3817 West Crest Street in Durham, 27707. 140 apartments and parking lots on south side of Pickett Road. I was told by city council members Durham should develop along its major arteries, like 15501 that heads straight into the city center from Chapel Hill, and 15501 bypass that encircles part of the western edge with a large number of apartments that have already been built and that remain mainly empty. Do we need another set of apartments built on a small street, Pickett Road, whose namesake knew he'd inherited land that was primarily in the floodplain? To accommodate the new traffic, this road would have to be widened. The bridge over Sandy Creek would need to, all to accommodate residents who just as easily could move to one of the existing apartments on 15501 or Cornwallis Road. If development paid for itself, property taxes would not continue to rise. This uncontrolled growth leads to gentrification and people leaving Durham because they can't afford to live here. On a separate issue, the H5N1 bird flu has now moved from cattle to pigs and to some humans. It's a matter of time before it mutates to allow human-to-human transmission. The 1918 H5N1 flu pandemic killed between 50 and 100 million people. Populations could be decimated. If Durham continues to build apartments that stay empty, a beautiful park will be marred, and the massive infrastructure will require maintenance forever. Thank you.
Thank you. The last 4 speakers that we have signed up in person are Daniel Ellison, Ospo Osborne, Jennifer and Evan Register and Angus Cook.
Daniel Ellison, I live at 31 Stonebridge Place, Durham, North Carolina. I took a moment this afternoon to walk on Sandy Creek Trail. Within just 2 minutes, flying overhead was a great blue heron, flying majestically in the air. We're so lucky to live in Durham, where nature can be right around the corner. It's what makes this one of the most desirable places to live in America. Once it's gone, it's gone. The Pickett Road Apartments proposal as is will have numerous negative impacts as follows. Increased unsafe additional traffic on a stretch of Pickett Road that is already experiencing more traffic at peak times than it can handle. Once it's done, it's done. Negative impact on the fauna and flora that inhabit and frequent the Sandy Creek Park wetlands. There has been no formal study of the effects on the natural habitat. Once it's gone, it's gone. Loss of opportunity to expand the natural area of Sandy Creek Park. Again, once it's gone, it's gone. The negative impact on the already existing plan to expand the Sandy Creek Trail across Pickett Road, once it's gone, it's gone. There are still unknowns regarding the effects of this development or other developments that would be allowed under the requested zoning change. Knowledge is power. To reiterate, no study has been conducted assessing the existing flora and fauna of the Sandy Creek Trail and wetlands surrounding it. We know that it contains an abundance of natural habitat life. If we do something that destroys the delicate balance that presently exists, we'll never get it back. Once it's gone, it's gone. We don't need to be in a hurry to develop this environmentally sensitive property. In the words of Joni Mitchell, and I've got 9 seconds left, wow. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot.
Thank you.
A little bit more lengthy. I did cut out a few things to meet the 2 minutes. So there's a little bit more information in what I handed to you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Orville Osborne. I'm a resident at 29 Stone Ridge Circle in Durham, which is near this proposed property development. The City of Durham has a responsibility to prevent a development from negatively impacting the existing neighborhood or current or future residents. So even if there are no parking requirements, the city should locate such a transit-demanding location where there are sidewalks, off-site parking, and mass transit. This proposal would add 140 apartments and only 155 parking spaces. Assuming 2 cars per apartment, there is nowhere for 125 cars to park. There's nowhere for this 125 cars to park. The nearest bus stop is over 1.3 miles from this site. Pickett Street is a busy, narrow, 2-lane road with no shoulders and no sidewalks. I provided a copy of this letter. I apologize that I couldn't figure out how to make the photo turn right side up, so you'll have to turn it like that. But it shows the very narrow slope that pedestrians have to walk on. So you're going to ask for 125 cars to find somewhere else to park, somewhere down this road, possibly at night. The nearest place to park is on Colony Road near my house. It's several minutes walk down a busy street, no sidewalks to get there, just a sloping dirt shoulder. The parking would be unfair to me and all the residents that live along there along Colony Road. As I frequently walk down, and you'll see people with walking, and there's baby strollers and dogs, and it's a beautiful place. Please don't cause a big problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Evan Register, representing Durham Academy at 3601 Ridge Road, 27705.
Hi, I'm Angus Cook, representing Durham Academy at the same address.
The Durham Academy cross-country team gathers every Friday morning at 6 a.m. before the sun comes up. We all have to cross Pickett Road to get into Sandy Creek for this run. Every morning we notice that there's heavy traffic even before the typical rush hour begins. As we return to the school, we have to cross Pickett again, this time at rush hour, when traffic is heavy and cars are speeding to get to school or work on time. The lack of any form of safety precaution has been a hindrance to the 60-plus runners trying to make it to Sandy Creek.
So we practice at Durham Academy in the summer, fall, winter, and spring. So for teams that train this much, it's easy to run out of engaging in new places to run. But for us, the main problem is to find somewhere safe to run. We've historically had 2 trails linked to Durham Academy, which is Roger Brooks to the north and Sandy Creek. The former was closed down to us this past summer, which leaves Sandy Creek as the only option. It's a beautiful, isolated, safe place where we can do our hour-long runs or even get in a good workout. However, the problem lies with getting to Sandy Creek. We have to cross an already busy and dangerous road to get to a trail that offers so many possibilities. We've implemented buddy systems and we've counted between cars to ensure that nobody's at risk, but increasing the flow of traffic would make it virtually impossible to cross our only to our only running sanctuary. It's a matter of exercise, of joy, and of safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Jennifer Bowling. I live at 3225 Coachman's Way. I live right down the street from where this new development is being planned for. And I only question, up the street on Western that crosses Pickett, there are 6 big apartment buildings that are not even 50% occupied. Right across the street on Pickett from there is a new apartment complex that hasn't even opened. So what is the traffic going to be when all these buildings are occupied 100%? We don't know. How can you do a traffic study if the buildings are not open yet? We're already having problems with traffic, and there are more schools that have been mentioned on Pickett Road. At the very end of Pickett is Trinity, a private school, and Crescent is right there on Garrett, which is not even a fourth of a mile off Pickett. And then you got Forest View, which is 2 blocks away. These schools haven't been mentioned. We have problems. And then you got Sandy Creek. Have you been to Sandy Creek? It is a blessing. It's beautiful. What's going to happen to it with this new construction? I really would like for you guys to think about that before you vote tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak before we move to the Zoom participants? Okay. Jennifer Mayer.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Marr. I live at 2514 Wrightwood Avenue in Durham. I'm a member of the New Hope Bird Alliance Conservation Committee. The Alliance is concerned about the impact of adding up to 140 units along the boundary of one of the most valuable natural resource areas in the city of Durham, Sandy Creek Park. Sandy Creek Park is located on a low-lying property. It was formerly a wastewater treatment plant. It contains a lake and extensive wetlands. It is therefore attractive to an extraordinary number of birds. I believe about 90 species have been identified there. These are both nesting and migrating birds, and among them are several species of concern as their populations are declining. There are several heron rookeries. These are colonial sites where herons are nesting, easily disturbed by light, by noise, and by what will be the effect of tall buildings being built right next to the park. Migrating birds fly into windows that are lit at night, and many migrating birds are attracted to this area because of the wetlands and its protection for them. Noise and lights coming from this development will also adversely affect birds and water quality. We should be concerned about the water quality needs to remain high in order to support the bird populations that eat fish. Citizens of Durham use this as for citizen science observations. New Hope Bird Alliance brings bird walks there. It counts the bird species that inhabit and pass through, and it's installed a purple martin nest tower. This is a species protected by Durham's Year of the Aerial Insectivore proclamation this year. The proposed 55% impervious surface will create runoff, as has been noted, and birds don't stop at the edge of a park. So we will have lights and noise affecting the birds that are living there and the birds that are flying through. A project of this size in proximity to Sandy Creek Park will substantially and adversely affect one of Durham's gems of biodiversity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, next we have Sherelle Figueroa. Hopefully I got close that time.
Thank you for
having me. I appreciate it. I just wanted to reiterate a few things. The senior facility, Solista, is next door to this proposed project. If this is built, it will make it very difficult for some of those folks to get around. It'll make it less safe for their driving. The danger with the traffic, I really recommend and hope that you will all really consider that this is not the right location for a project of this size of 140 apartments, especially when, as it's been stated previously, there are other apartment complexes that are not even open, just east on Pickett on the other side of 15501. Other apartments that are being built and almost open there. It's just, this is not a good neighborhood. So thank you for listening, and I hope you all will really consider this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Candace. Go ahead.
Thank you, Candace from Colony Hill. I love this area. It's quiet, tucked away, and people don't know it's there. That is rapidly changing, and as trees and wildlife habitat disappear at alarming rates from every last corner of the Triangle, North Carolina, and the U.S., our quality of life as humans continues to decline, as does those of our friends, the wildlife. Thoughtless and short-sighted threats to mature tree canopy, wildlife habitat, Sandy Creek Park, as well as increased traffic are among the many concerns I have about this proposal. With every additional high-density development building, particularly those close to natural areas such as our beloved Sandy Creek, we take one more step towards destroying our sense of place, the beautiful and calming natural environment which used to attract people here in the first place. Think about how you feel about a place when you travel down a tree-lined roadway versus one surrounded by strip malls and high-rises. We are on the precipice of turning a gem of a city into another soulless generic anytown. Some think this is already happening. I suspect the developer, who is not part of our local Triangle or even North Carolina community, has little concern for our Durham community. Contrary to what they have asserted, apartments are not missing from this area as they continue to crop up in the 15501 corridor and right around the corner from this development, replacing the acres of trees that used to greet us along our affectionately known Tobacco Road and beyond. This is one more unnecessary and unsightly building that local residents do not want, and it is not going to solve the housing and affordability issue. I would like to ask everyone here, what value do we place on green spaces as a society, and why don't we do more to preserve them? Why do we have to gobble up every last existing space and cover it with yet more ugly and unimaginative concrete cubes, not to mention the noise and light pollution they bring, as previously mentioned? We need to think about the big picture. As a community, why don't we start investing in and preserving our unique, remarkable, and natural areas? Instead, consider converting empty existing office space or even using the apartments that are not at capacity. There is a cost to rapid development, and it's not just what the developer pays. We taxpaying residents who are directly impacted in a negative way, and the reputation and aesthetic of our beloved Bull City or any place is a very real cost.
Thank you. Next, we have Bradley.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for listening to us all here tonight. I live at 3125 Coachman's Way, just east of the proposed development. I will do my best to not echo any of the concerns that have already been raised. I know you've heard many of them many times. And so I want to put some additional ones in front of you. I have 2 dogs, a small daughter. I cross Pickett Road at Colony Road at minimum 4 times a day. And every time I am worried that one of us is going to be hit by a car. If you look on your map, as Pickett Road curves by Colony, it looks like a very gentle bend. That's a very blind corner, and people are frequently speeding around that corner. Now, Mr. Ghosh and the Morningstar Law Group, they've said that existing issues are not their problem. And while I agree, it's also their responsibility not to exacerbate an existing problem. Many have said that there are apartments going up that hill. Again, those are not open. We have no idea what the impact of that community will be, as well as, mostly vacant apartments at Lancaster that are on Western Boulevard. I would urge you all to not be a rubber stamp to this. This is going to destroy Sandy Creek Park. This is going to create a massive issue, a safety issue for Durham Academy, for local residents, and for the 2 senior centers that are nearby. So I hope that you consider this. I hope that you do not recommend this for approval, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else on the Zoom? We have Betsy Ross. Please go ahead.
Okay, I want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes.
I'm at 33, I'm Betsy Ross, 3328 Rolling Hill Road, just a block away from this proposed development. The location is a terrible spot for this for many reasons. From an environmental standpoint, the parcel, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to turn my, it's getting terrible echo. I'm not, do you mind if I switch over to my phone?
You want to leave
can't
and
hear
dial back
myself.
in?
This meeting is being recorded.
I think you are logged on twice, which is why you're hearing an echo.
Okay, I'm gonna try to cut off that. Okay, now can you hear me? But okay.
Yes.
All right.
You can
thanks. I'm
start
sorry
her
about
back at a minute 30, please.
Thank you. I appreciate it. From an environmental standpoint, this parcel is situated right between Sandy Creek. It's just a nature park and a preserve. And if you have not been there, I would urge you to go. And Emerald Pond, both spots are favorite resting spots for migratory birds. I've seen hooded mergansers here, as well as the herons and kingfishers, mallards. The light pollution, as mentioned, would create and disrupt the migratory birds. Flooding is already a big problem here. If you just walk behind where this proposal is, there are trees stacked up like toothpicks. The runoff created by a large complex like this will destroy wetland habitats of the threatened and endangered species of the Carolina gopher frog and the gray tree frog, which is listed as a species of special concern and is significantly rare. The threatened species of the wood thrush and the prothonotary warbler are there as well. This development would cause habitat loss, pollution, exposure to pesticides and insecticides for all these animals and plants. Traffic is already heavy and already an issue. And then there's the new huge apartment complex of 8 to 11 buildings under construction. I agree with those ahead of me. What's that going to do? That 12,000 can't be, Capacity Road can't be right. This needs to have a new study. This is a dangerous area with the blind
Thank you.
hill and
I'm
curve.
sorry, you're out of time, Ms. Ross. Thank you. Is there anyone else on the Zoom that would like to speak? Judson Knott. I saw a hand raised in this. Did you want to speak, Judson Knott, or your hand was raised? And I think you're unmuted now. Nope. Anyone else on the Zoom? Trying to see if he can. All right, we have David Schultz that has raised his hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I like the other speakers, I don't want to repeat things that already have been said, but I do think that, again, I just have to reiterate the traffic. I live at 104 Academy Ridge Drive, just around the corner and across the street from Durham Academy. I have 3 boys that have attended Durham Academy. 2 are still students at Durham Academy. So I want to speak to, not only do we have a lot of traffic, but we have a lot of young drivers around here. We've had several accidents which young drivers have, but increasing the local congestion of traffic could only increase the possibility of adverse outcomes, including young drivers. If you throw the older drivers at the retirement community into the equation, you've got some potential problems there. And then again, with that new apartment complex up the road at Western Bypass, you've got even more traffic, and we've yet to see the impacts of that traffic. It should be known that that corner, that intersection of Ridge and Pickett, has some obstacles to sight. So if you're trying to make a right on Red there, you often pull out with a car coming right over the curb. There's often speeding on that road. Again, you could have adverse outcomes, particularly with young drivers, which I have, who do not judge the speed and distance as well as an older, more experienced driver. All other concerns about the environmental impacts I agree with. I think that this is being proposed because this is available land for sale, it's a parcel. It is certainly not ideal for this. In fact, it is really bad for this type of development for all the previously stated reasons. That's all I have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. We're going to try for Judson Knott again. Can you speak, sir, to see if we can hear you? Because you are in. If you're on your phone, click *9 or connect to audio. Because we cannot hear you. Yep. Anyone else on the Zoom? All right. Before we close the public hearing, I'm wondering if the applicant can come back up and address some themes that were addressing the stormwater concerns, the floodplain encroachment concerns, the driveway and the narrowness of the road, the road safety of pedestrians, and then I don't know if Aaron or someone can address completing that 10-foot path on either side, who owns that property. But those are the items that I wrote down. Thank you. Go ahead.
Members of the Planning Commission, I'm Michael Fiocco with Civil Consultants. We're at 3708 Lichen Parkway, Suite 201 in Durham. And I can address, I think, some of those issues. Stormwater in particular. Sandy Creek is an active floodplain, and this property is 6 acres in size, limited to 55% of that will be additional runoff from impervious surfaces. The watershed above us is 3,500 acres. So that is a pretty substantial differential between what this project is going to contribute to that floodplain versus what is already being contributed to it. Calculation, that's 0.02% of the floodplain. We have committed to not encroach in the floodplain or any wetlands and to keep the property, the development portion of the property out of those areas. The 10-foot multi-use path will be constructed across the frontage of the property, and it will actually connect to an existing 5-foot wide sidewalk to Ridge Road and beyond. It will stop to our east at our boundary, and to continue, noticed or stated that the slopes are a little bit severe on the roadway, and to undertake a capital project such as that would really take NCDOT, the city, and the county contributing funds to widen that road. If there were other issues that I missed, please remind me.
The driveway, road crossing.
Oh, the road crossing, again, that is one of those improvements that is well beyond the scope of this project. It's so far from the project in itself. It would require NCDOT approval. It would require the city of Durham's approval. And we could look into that and report back to City Council at our public hearing with them.
And pedestrian crossing as well, that's city, or just anyone want to?
We could look into that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll definitely investigate that.
And we should note that this project is making substantial improvements to the roadway in front of the property, expanding it to a 3-lane section. And for the driveway that Durham Academy is using that was mentioned to be, had some safety concerns, we are dedicating a left turn lane only for that driveway. So we've been working extensively with the city, transportation folks, and the NCDOT to come up with these commitments for this project.
Thank you. Closing the public hearing at this time, and now open for commissioner discussion and questions. Commissioner Kopak.
All right, so thank you to the applicant. Thank you to all the speakers, especially to Evan and Angus. You know, it's not easy to get up here in front of the commission here, so thanks for having the bravery and the conviction to come up and do that. And to all the folks who reached out from the community with emails to our inbox. I appreciate some of the proffers that have been put forward, the affordable housing, the partial bike ped improvement, the DPS contribution. You know, clearly you've touched on some things that are important to this commission and things that I look for sure. I think we're hearing a lot of concerns in this meeting and before about the traffic and the safety concerns for pedestrians and bikers, which I definitely take seriously. I want to raise specifically the issue of this being an environmentally sensitive area, and this is both a question to the applicant and staff. I noted that this is a North Carolina Conservation Protected Area and a City of Durham Critical Areas Protection Plan area for Sandy Creek. I didn't see that mentioned in the application. I want to make sure that I have that right, and whether that should lead to any additional consideration about this case, given those designations.
I'll need to do a double check on those designations. I don't know of those off the top of my head, but I can make sure that we can double check on those designations and make sure they're in the city council staff report if they're.
Okay. Alrighty. And applicant awareness, you know, of those designations and what you've taken into account, you know, given the sensitivity of the site. I will note that I went for a walk in Sandy Creek Trail this morning, and so I have a personal experience from that walk about how special it is, so I understand the passion and the connection that people have for it. So I'm curious, just what thinking and work you put into the idea of this being an environmentally sensitive area.
No, I'm glad you asked that question because I did the same thing. I walked my dog down the Sandy Creek Trail today. Yeah, that's why we constrained it. You know, the acreage that our client is purchasing is much larger than the barely over 6 acres. So we've really contracted the disturbed area and then reduced the impervious surface below what UDO would allow. And Michael knows it far better than I do, but my understanding is our post-development conditions need to mirror what the pre-development conditions are in terms of what we can do, in terms of what stormwater runoff would be allowed from that site.
We will definitely meet the city's requirements for stormwater control on this property. The fact that we are so low in the floodplain and the watershed, city regulations recognize that it's advantageous for us to detain it for only so long and to let it go before the large volume of water comes through, which oftentimes creates high water conditions in that area. So we will definitely, we're very sensitive to the stormwater requirements here, very sensitive to the environmental issues as far as floodplain and wetlands, and we are staying out of them altogether, and we'll be treating stormwater according to city requirements.
I mean, given where you're situated, you're in some ways the last line of defense then and contributing to the water that's running downhill. You know, there's a policy in the comprehensive plan calling for creative stormwater improvements. You know, have you undertaken any of those? I didn't see it specifically noted to try and be, you know, a catchment to help stem the flow of water to this area.
We will definitely be detaining some of the flow. That is for certain. the fact that we're developing up on the higher portion of the property, it's going to require some creative storm water, such as beneath the parking lot and subsurface kind of treatment. So we don't have all the T's crossed and I's dotted, but that's what we anticipate we're going to do.
Okay. I think it'd be helpful to have something specific on that. I know you can't tonight, but definitely before City Council.
Yeah.
I think it'd be helpful to know, since that is such a significant concern. The last I'll ask, because I'm going to run out of time, is about the Engage Durham work that was done that covered this site, that recommended a lower density, 8 units per site. I don't know if you've seen that, and what other sort of what other sort of developments were considered for this location before moving forward with this decision?
It's been an apartment project from the beginning, and trying to capitalize on the density that a planned development residential zoning would allow. And that is the type of thing that enables us to proffer the affordable housing component, because you've got to have some density to offset the burden of providing for those affordable units. And we've committed 10%, 30% of those are at 60% AMI, 30 at 80%, and 30 at 100%. And they're all, of course, going to be affordable for 30 years. So you need that kind of density to create the ability to provide for affordable housing.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I echo Commissioner Kovac's comment to both the applicant for the details and the community at large, the cross community at large. Parking, a couple of questions there. 140 units, 154 parking spots, not buses near the area, public transportation. The math doesn't add up to me either. Can you address that question and concern?
Well, as everybody's aware, the city recently got rid of any parking requirements, and so is leaving it up to the marketplace to decide that. And this developer has done studies that tell him that, or them, that 155, I think, parking spaces as opposed to 4, is adequate for up to 140 units. Of course, with this rezoning, it's a maximum of 140, and the project could have less. We have studied, and looks like we can do 155 parking spaces. So we're relying on the marketplace to make that decision.
Yeah, I appreciate that on the UDO, and also I could get into other areas of safety, transportation, traffic, and I could bring that to a different way. With that said, the other question I have is, in your view, based on the changes you made, the $500,000 in transportation, I've heard different people talk about different issues, school crossing, the impact that would create in safety. I also heard from the traffic perspective, we have a lot of units already in the area that have been built, not your issue, but we have a flow down effect in terms of the impact in the community at large and safety. I don't know if they're occupied or not. I'll defer to the actual, I don't really know. Doesn't affect you, I understand. But it does raise the general specter of traffic parking outside of the development and on the road, we've heard. So I'm still looking at that overall impact. Can you comment on that as far as any sort of evaluation beyond the 154 where they park if they did come?
Well, they most definitely will not park on the roadway. That would not be a possibility at all. They would immediately be towed, and it would be an unsafe condition, granted. But we think that at 1 parking space per unit, which is essentially what the 55 is to 140, is...
Yeah, I was talking too about the overall improvements you're talking about, how that would alleviate a lot of the concerns I heard.
Well, it will provide for greater mobility along the frontage, and there are tapers back to where it goes back to the narrow road. But for the frontage, it is most definitely providing for the width for bicycle use and pedestrian use and safe automobile use. As far as the crosswalk goes, it doesn't make sense to me for this project to provide a mid-block walk because it's literally several hundred feet from the signal at Ridge Road where there would be safer crossing.
Yeah, although knowing students, I'm not sure that always plays out in terms of advantages. Two last questions for me is, one, with respect to the floodplain, I believe I heard that you're looking at ways to address the stormwater and the floodplain. I didn't hear specificity. I'll point that out. You can provide whatever you can today. But I'm also a former FEMA, so I understand the 100-year, 10-year, and the changes that are going on, which we can't plan for right now, but we have to anticipate. So that's why I would like a little bit more specificity as far as what you actually have in your plans, if you have any.
Well, we don't have that level of specificity yet. We do know that we're going to have to do, meet the city standards, and we're going to do that. And again, the fact that we're so low in the floodplain that it is advantageous for this project to detain it for only so long.
Okay. A question for our staff on planning. The environmental aspects of this, we've heard about conservation. I read something in the application that it didn't apply. But how does that get assessed in terms of, I heard wildlife, I've heard about different sort of impacts in the park that would be impacted by this. Has that been evaluated or should it be evaluated by the planning group?
If you're talking about how the development might affect, impacts on wildlife in the park, we don't have an objective way at this time to quantitatively measure what those impacts might be. There are requirements in the UDO for how much light can be coming from off the site, and so they'll need to meet those requirements. And there are city ordinances regarding noise and how loud things can be coming off the site, but other than that, we don't have a quantitative way to measure that.
Okay, Chair, thanks.
Thank you. Any other?
Thank you, Chair. So there have been environmental, traffic, and parking concerns and many others expressed by community members who have spoken tonight, and thank you so much to the folks who have engaged. Are there any additional commitments that you all are willing to make to address the concerns mentioned?
Yeah, we'll work with NCDOT, but we can state on the record tonight, subject to NCDOT approval, we will provide the crossing there, but we'd have to check with Ms. Thomas and her counterpart at NCDOT if that is in fact a feasible improvement.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Patrick, can you state exactly where that crossing would be or give me something?
You know,
I think it's the Sandy Creek.
Yeah, it'd be at the Sandy Creek Trail, Mr. Kane.
That's good enough. That's
good enough. Okay, and we'll reach out to NCDOT since it's their jurisdiction. We have to reach out to them.
Understood, and we can work on the language.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Vice Chair Shigeris.
I'd like to address the applicant's comment about affordable housing being a burden. I mean, affordable housing in this context isn't like, a Section 8. It's affordable housing for first responders, teachers, policemen. Well, they are first responders. I personally don't consider the fact of having affordable housing for that type of people in that work class to be called a burden. I mean, other than a financial burden to the developer. If you could elaborate on that comment.
Well, my apologies. I did not intend for it to sound as a burden. I did refer to it as a financial burden. And in fact, in some other places, they are promoting subsidies, if you will. And what I mean by that is the municipality or the county making an investment that enables affordable housing to be constructed by forgiving fees for the developer or that type of activity. So I don't think that affordable housing is a reference to the burden as any characterization of folks who are occupying affordable housing units. It was recognizing that it's below market rate. Market rate is set at a place where the developer can afford to do the project. If you're doing under market rate, there's a burden to be overcome, and whether that is absorbing a loss or having some other form of subsidy, some contribution to the development, that's what I'm talking about. And I apologize, I did not want anyone to perceive that as what I was using the word burden for.
Commissioner Cutright.
We often get projects that are like this that have a lot of neighborhood concerns, whether it's traffic, environment, and it depends on the area. And what I often say is there are some things at odds here that are competing, right? When we start to develop, and in this case, we're looking for housing, additional housing, and what the challenge is how do we impact the environment and also get housing, and is there a way for these things to coexist and to sort of be symbiotic in nature? That's a difficult thing to accomplish. And so as I look at the proposal, and there are a number of items where you've committed to going above and beyond the UDO, the community's raised some concerns. Vast majority of those are environmental, some traffic. I think traffic concerns are important, but for the environmental concerns, and we can look at, to also piggyback on that, when we look at some of the policies that, the comprehensive plan policies, some of the ones that are not met are the ones around green infrastructure, innovative stormwater, development in floodplains. These are the concerns that the neighborhood's bringing up that, in my opinion, probably look at going above and beyond UDO commitments on, right? In order to try and create this symbiotic relationship, get done what you'd like to get done, and sort of meet the needs of the neighborhood. It's not going to be a perfect match, right? There's going to be some give and take there. And it sounds like you've been working with the neighborhood to try and address some of those things, but I think the policies specifically that are not met are very concerning to the neighbors. And so my question would be, how do you address that? How do you at least meet those comprehensive plan policies? I've heard you mention multiple times that you'll meet the UDO requirement for stormwater retention. Cool. They've got bigger concerns here. I would expect to go above and beyond on those. That's how we create the symbiotic relationship and potentially alleviate some of those concerns and also get accomplished what you want. I recognize there's cost to all of these things, right? You got to balance that. That's where you have to start to get creative. And I don't know the answer to that, not right now, but I don't know what you'd say to that, but to me, that seems to be the challenge. And what I would suggest as you go into city council that you come forth with is, here are the policies that are particularly concerning to the neighborhood. And by the way, I'm going above and beyond on these in order to try to meet some of the needs that they have. Just a thought.
Understand. Thank you.
Just, I guess, a combination comment and question around natural heritage inventories. We also have on our applications that we read, there's always a question about whether there's been a natural heritage inventory done, and almost invariably it's no, it hasn't been done. It's not required, but it's a question, has it been done? Is my understanding correct that that is largely driven by the county that has a program to do biodiversity assessments in partnership with the state Natural Heritage Program, and whether or not that's been done for a site like this is dependent on whether it's been done separately by the county and their state partnership?
Yeah. So the North Carolina Natural Heritage Inventory is something managed by the state, and so the information that we provide you is that we're getting from the state and is initiated by them and/or the county.
Okay, so if we want to see more of that, that's a combination of the state, and I know the county has a program, they fund some of that. That's where that would come from. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. And on that point, staff, I read in the application that the NC Natural Heritage Inventory did not identify any unique, endangered, sensitive species or vegetation. Did I read that correctly in the application?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the general question. Going back to the reason I piped up again, I did hear the comment, existing issues, but don't exasperate. Not your issue, but the general issue of looking at the area as a whole. I also had issues with policies that aren't being met, not only the environmental, but the school one, which is an ongoing concern for me. When you have schools that are 121% at capacity for the high school, notwithstanding the commitment that you made for 22,000, notwithstanding 140,000 operating costs per year and 2.6 million in construction. But here's my general question, not for you, but just in context. Do we need this development? Does it? Yeah, it may meet the UDO, but do we need it? We've sat here and we've approved thousands and thousands of additional units. We need affordable housing, without a doubt. I appreciate my commissioners raising that point because of the affordability of housing in Durham, and that's without question in my view. But my question is, where does it fit in terms of not only the overarching assessment for Durham, but the specific assessment for this area? Could you reduce the 140? You know, it was originally, I think, 12 single family. Could you reduce 140 to a lesser number to build, addressing some of the concerns that were raised, leaving enough space for the walkways, the impact? I'm just, to my commissioner's early point, is there a middle ground here that we're missing before it goes to City Council?
If I,
please.
If I may, thank you, Commissioner Johnson. I brought up the process, and I apologize to members of the Planning Commission who were not involved with the lengthy process by which we adopt the new comprehensive plan and the place type map. That's why I referenced, I mean, it was hours and hours of public hearings on obviously for all 299 square miles of Durham, but specifically the place type map. And I attended, I think, every hour that this board held public hearings and that the city council did. And I was just attending as a regular citizen most of the time, not on behalf of a client. Based on the discussion I heard, Commissioner Johnson, when I looked at the place type map that said apartment and townhouse neighborhood for this parcel, we looked at it and we said, well, if we did more townhouses, that's just picking up on what's already there on Coachman's Way and Pickett Square. It's not really adding to the diversity of housing, and that's why I referred to diversity in my comments. We had Mr. Kopech, Chair Cameron, Commissioner Cutright. I lost track of how many hours we were in this room having public hearings. The overriding theme was diversity of housing. And so if we just made this a townhouse development, we're not increasing the diversity of housing on what I think is an important corridor of Durham. And what by important I mean, we've got places of worship, we've got schools, we've got, you know, shopping down on 15501. There's no doubt, this is an attractive area for people to live. But if you're a person who's, you know, by choice or by the stage of life that you're in, needing an apartment, you're not going to find anything on this side of 15501. Keep in mind, everything on the other side of 15501, that's the compact neighborhood tier. That's an entirely different set of guidelines for how development happens than the suburban tier. I know we got rid of tiers with the new comprehensive plan, but those concepts still apply. And so when we were looking at this site, to answer your question, should we reduce the number? I would hesitate to do that, sir. And that gets back to, you brought up an interesting point about the number of apartment developments that have been approved in Durham. And again, most of them are well over 200 units, and that's because, here's another example. You want to do as many units as you can because a turn lane costs, in this case, $500,000. Well, if you once you amortize it over, let me see, for the UDO, you have to, once you go over 90 units, you have to have 2 access points. And so we have that. Once you have the 2 access points, you might as well go to 250, 300 units because it's the same fixed cost and you're amortizing it over the number of units. Here's another example that's particular to Durham. We have 2 access points. We need to have 2 water mains going into the development. I don't think in Raleigh you would have to do that. I don't think in Cary you would have to do that. You just need 1. I'm not saying it's a large number, but it's still more infrastructure. So once you put in the infrastructure, you would actually want to increase the number of units to even more to amortize those fixed infrastructure costs over a higher variable number of units. And so I actually think 140 is a fairly reasonable number for this. In my 25 plus years of experience, I would have to say this is the smallest apartment development I've brought forward. I honestly can't think of a smaller one, sir. They've all been in the 200s to my recollection. Now, I can't remember what I had for breakfast, so do I remember every apartment project that I brought forward? No. But the vast majority of them are in the well over 200 units, some are in the 300 range. So I appreciate the, you know, this gentleman was on the Pittsboro Town Commission. He knows exactly what it is to make a decision as an elected official. You know, when we started evaluating this site, we were way over 140 units when we first started looking at it. So we actually came down as a team before we brought this forward with 140 units on slightly over 6 acres.
I won't question your logic, but I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Sorry to take up so much time. I apologize.
Questions? Back in March of 23, there's only 4 of us left on this commission. We had a joint meeting with City Council, and a presentation was given to us by the Community Development Department that defined affordable housing, showed how many housing units were needed in Durham and how many affordable housing units were needed in Durham. And Commissioner Williams and I just found that from March 1st, 23. And we will forward that to the rest of the commission. It has some great information in there, background information. Unfortunately, less than half of the commission is around that received that report. And perhaps, Aaron, maybe you can check and see if that's been updated since then. It's almost been 2 years, but it would be good background information for everyone to have. Are there any other questions from the commission? Are we ready to move this forward? May I have a...
Chair, as it relates to case.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah, I jumped the gun. Go ahead.
You're ready to take the vote?
Do we have?
No proffers, right? You don't.
No additional proffers.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, there is the one proffer for the crossing.
Crossing at Sandy Creek. Okay.
Yeah, you've got that, Mr. Kane?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. That additional proffer is on the record, sir.
Chair, as it relates to case Z2400001 Pickett Apartments, I make a motion that we move this case forward with the additional proffer of a crossing at Sandy Creek to City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Cutright and seconded by Commissioner Williams to move case Z2400001 Pickett Apartments forward with a favorable recommendation. May I have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron.
Yes.
Vice Chair Shigaris.
No.
Commissioner Cutright.
Yes.
Commissioner Chakowski.
No.
Commissioner Gregory.
No.
Commissioner Johnson.
No.
Commissioner Kopak.
No.
Commissioner McIver.
No.
Commissioner Williams.
No.
Commissioner Woke.
No.
The motion fails 8-2.
Thank you. Sorry, no clapping, decorum, and if you're leaving after this, please do so quietly. We have one more case to go. Thank you. All right, moving on to case Z24000C, Davis Park West. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, this is clearly the case that everybody is here for tonight. Z2400006, Davis Park West. This is a bit of a different case than you usually see. This request is simply for a change to an approved development plan. It does not, the request is not to change the underlying zoning of mixed use with a development plan. Next slide, please. Okay. As you can see, this is the current zoning of mixed-use development. There is industrial light to the east, office and institutional to the west, and residential to the north. The aerial shows that this area, which is in southeastern Durham County near RTP, is already heavily developed. That is the Triangle Expressway to the west of the site. Okay. The summary of changes that are requested, these are to the design commitments within the existing development plan. This is to change it so that structured parking and office uses would be permitted on the ground floor. Previously, the current development plan only allows for commercial and residential uses on the ground floor. Also to allow those uses to face internally to the site, to have their entrances face the interior of the site rather than the exterior of the site, and also to require for screening and architectural materials on any exposed faces to the public right-of-way of the parking decks. An initial neighborhood meeting was held in accordance with UDO requirements on January 28th, 2024. 30 community members were in attendance. A second meeting was held on October 28th, 2024. And this case was not reviewed for comprehensive plan consistency, again, since the only request here are changes to the design commitments on an existing development plan, but per the UDO, that does need to go through a zoning map change process. And staff and the applicant are here to answer any questions.
Thank you. The chair now opens the public hearing, and we have the applicant at the podium.
Good evening, Chairwoman Cameron, Vice Chair Shigaris, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Patrick Biker. I still live at 2614 Stewart Drive, and I'm still an attorney with Morningstar Law Group. I'm here tonight representing Craig Davis Properties for this amendment to a previously approved development plan. The development plan we're talking about amending is for Davis Park West. It has been my privilege to be the attorney for Davis Park for almost probably more than 20 years. I hope the Planning Commission has utilized this section of the UDO for amendments to development plans. That's section 3.5.12B, since that's the UDO section governing this agenda item. Section 3.5.6 of the UDO applies to public hearings for zoning map changes with development plans, which was all the other cases that we heard tonight, and that's typical of the rezonings that you hear and consider at every meeting. I very much appreciate the staff report on this item, and all that we're discussing tonight are modifications to Design Commitments 4 and Design Commitments 5 of the most recent development plan for Davis Park West. My recollection is that the City Council approved Davis Park West unanimously back in 2019. The main reason for this amendment is to address what turned out to just be a misunderstanding. Long story short, our development plan approved in 2019 called for retail frontages to be along the streets of Davis Park West. When we started the site plan process, the folks in the planning department said that those streets included Davis Drive. Our team had viewed Davis Drive, which is a multi-lane road posted for 50 miles an hour, not as a street, but as a major thoroughfare. Our plan for the Davis Park West retail was to have that front on the internal streets of Davis Park West. Just to give you an example of that, if any of you have been to Meadowmont, Craig Davis Properties was also the developer of the Meadowmont commercial area, and that's what we had in mind for Davis Park. Accordingly, we need to amend these two designed commitments, number 4 and number 5, in order to move forward and to avoid building retail space that opens out onto Davis Drive. And so I respectfully ask for your recommendation of approval. I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think anyone signed up for this. Nope. Make sure no one's on the Zoom. Anyone on the Zoom would like to speak? Anyone here? All right. I am closing the public hearing and opening up for commissioner comment or questions. Everybody's wore out from the last one, huh? Anything? No? All right, you all, if we are ready to move this forward, let's have a motion.
Chair, as it relates to case Z2400006 Davis Park West, I make a motion that we move this case forward with a favorable recommendation to City Council.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Cutright and seconded by Commissioner Williams to move case Z2400006 Davis Park West forward with a favorable recommendation. May I have the roll call vote, please?
Chair Cameron.
Yes.
Vice Chair Shigaris.
Yes.
Commissioner Cutright.
Yes.
Commissioner Chakowski.
Yes.
Commissioner Gregory.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Opak.
Yes.
Commissioner McIver.
Yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes.
Commissioner Woke.
Yes.
Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you. Do we have any committee updates? Nope. Do we have any new business? Do we have any staff announcements?
The only thing, just anyway, forecasting for next month, we only have 3 cases planned to be on the agenda, but one of them is a rather controversial case, so that one's going to take a while, I think.
Can we put that first?
Let's talk about that, how we want to arrange that. It's called Mariah Ridge. That one is scheduled for next month right now.
Yep.
Question for Aaron and staff. So there was an email that came in about a proposed rezoning connected to the rescue mission?
Yes.
Do we have any sense of when that might be on our agenda?
It's going to be a while. That case is still under review. There were some additional parcels added to that application, so that required us to go through an additional review cycle. I think it's not imminent at this time, and it is not ready to be scheduled.
Okay, thank you.
No announcements?
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out the planning staff for answering questions that I raised in advance. It's been very helpful and timely, so they'll keep coming, but thank you.
We very much appreciate getting the questions ahead of time. That's really helpful for us to be able to answer them and provide a researched response. So, yeah, if there's like the week before, if you know you've had some questions because you've had a chance to get through the agenda packet ahead of time, please don't feel bashful about sending those in. We'll get you responses. If we can't get your responses by email, we'll do our best to have responses prepared for the meeting.
I do have a quick question about that natural heritage study. What is the date on that? Is there a date like it says? I mean, do you when you say that the natural heritage didn't find any? Yeah, didn't find any. Are they like? Did they do it yesterday? Did they do it a week ago? What's the?
I'm not exactly sure how that process works. It is something that is, I believe, regularly updated as new sites are identified or something. Then they're added to that. I don't believe it's not a static report. It's something that's maintained by the state.
Okay.
And we check it every time we do a staff report. Every time we do a review, we check to see if the site is within a natural heritage area as as reported by the state.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we adjourn.